special meeting of the Ojai City Council is now adjourned without any report out on the two issues before us. We will now call into session the regular meeting of the Ojai City Council and ask the clerk to call the roll. In the absence of the clerk, James?
James, that would be you.
Councilmember Wyrick?
Here.
Councilmember Haney?
Here.
Councilmember Francina?
Here.
Councilmember Blatz?
Here.
Mayor Johnston?
Here, somewhere. Okay. All right. Well, we've done the pledge already once.
Yeah.
I think that's good enough. The approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Mayor, I wanted to pull H and I for the separate discussion.
Okay, and we also have a request to pull J. So with those three exceptions, if there's no other correction or alignment of the agenda stands approved. Consent calendar, do we have a motion to approve all but H, I, and J?
Move approval.
Okay, we got a motion.
Second.
And seconded. Are there any objections? Hearing none, so ordered. Okay, Bill, H.
Yeah, this is came back to us because the focus that I think that I felt and other council people felt was the need to really focus on traffic enforcement. It seems like we have a different kind of situation than we've had in past years. Plus, we're not sure schools are going to be opening. And so the change that was made was to add directed traffic safety enforcement. But it still included the use of the school resource officer and the services, the part-time sheriff's service technician. And I just wanted some kind of assurance that we are going to make a serious effort and maybe bringing in a motorcycle patrol. And it's not just safety, it's actual traffic law enforcement.
Right. I agree with you. Just this weekend, holidays always bring a few extra challenges, but we had another death up on Highway 33. Not that we could have done much about that, but you add that where I live down on Creek Road, a car came through the stop sign, pushed another car, had to pull completely off into the shoulder, slammed the brakes on, and then the car went through the front yard of my next door neighbor and came out barely into the part of my yard, and then took off. All they had to do was follow the oil trail when the oil pan got blown off of the car. And I want to thank the chief and his people getting together with his colleagues in the highway patrol, and they got the guy down in Ventura. But we're having a lot more. We had a Porsche rally go by this morning. We had a Corvette group. They like the little windy roads where we have a lot of safety concerns. So anything we can do to work on that, Bill, I'm on your side.
Yeah.
Well, Mayor,
Yeah,
again, it's traffic period, whether it's increased speed because there's fewer people on the road. There's more people on bikes that are not adhering to the rules of the road. There's just a number of things that have to be looked at. And again, Bill and I had talked about this at the last council session about this $100,000 and how to best utilize it. And so again, we're paying $3.4 million for policing services for the city of Ojai, and we have to fund a $60,000 a year job out of it. So I'm just thinking that we can ask the sheriff, or I should say we should ask our chief to maybe investigate this with the sheriff's department and see if there's any other funding mechanism that he could tap into for that position, which in turn allow us to spend more money on traffic enhancement and enforcement.
Ryan?
My question is for the chief. Chief, I had a question. I've read some things lately that, and don't get me wrong, that school safety isn't super important, but that school resource officers were counterproductive and were leading toward more arrests and more problems with students. And a culture of hate towards law enforcement that wasn't healthy, and other negative things. And I just wonder what your opinion is as far as allocating resources within some of this money we have toward a school resource officer. Is that still something you'd recommend? Is it something, especially with the reduced enrollment at Nordhoff, is that still, where our money is best spent?
Yeah, I mean, the funding that we're looking at from previous times, it's not a full-time position that we're looking at. It's actually a collateral position that deputies here at the station have. So when there's like a special event at the school, or if there are no special events, then the deputy will be allocated to work. I think it was 8 hours a week between the two schools. So really you're only looking at a few hours a week per school, and it's basically to interact with the kids. And a lot of times they gather a lot of information from the kids on any issues that might be coming up, and then they're able to mitigate a lot of problems at the school and also within the community.
Okay. So you see it as a net benefit anyway, Chief? I mean, you sorry, Randy, you think that school resource officer has still some substantial benefit? That makes a lot of sense too, because where else would there be any line of communication? I'm sure you're not flipping a lot of 18-year-olds into CIs. So talking to the school is probably the best you can do.
No, but I think it develops that relationship with the kids at the schools. In case there are issues, that they have somebody they can come to and talk to, and something could be done about it before it really turns into something pretty serious.
Thank you, Chief.
Mayor, if I can on this, I do respect that position in regards to the young children at the school, and I agree with the comments that Ryan said. And obviously, one of the benefits is that you create a trust in police officers and policing with young children or young kids. I value that. I remember the 14 years I was at Nordhoff, we had cops and jocks. Don Rodardi, that's where I met him. And he went on to coach with us. He went on to actually lead Nordhoff's girls softball team to a championship. So I respect that position. I guess along with Bill's thoughts and my thoughts too, is the city of Ojai is funding a position on the city of Ojai's municipal, school district, and I'm just not sure if that's the best use of our money.
And I'm worried. And I'm worried that we have an increased danger situation with and that you have to make choices between scarce resources. And one of the things that I like about maybe having a motorcycle patrol that Randy suggested is it's a lot easier. I think it'd have a real deterrent effect to have that around, even if it was just every once in a while.
Yeah, and I think this weekend we may try to have a motor unit come out for this weekend because of the increase in traffic and, with the reopening and everything, just to see how that works out.
And the increased incidence of motorcycle tours coming through, not all of which are respectful and gracious.
Correct.
But they do frequent our gas stations with no masks, I noticed. We have meetings there, I think.
Yeah, so.
Okay, what do we want to do on this item? Bill?
Well, Chief, you feel like we should leave the school resource officer in there?
I do. I think because of the way it's worded, we're able to use the funding really where we need it. So if traffic enforcement is a serious issue, we can really focus on that and still focus on the other issues if they need.
Would it be more clear to pass the resolution simply deleting the word safety, so it just reads traffic enforcement? In other words, it's not a safety program; it's actual enforcement.
Right.
Would you be okay with that?
I'll be okay with that.
I'm going to recommend that we pass a resolution with deletion of the word safety between traffic and enforcement then.
And I would second that.
Okay, Susan, you wanted to comment?
I'm not understanding why you would delete the word safety, because traffic enforcement is connected to safety.
I don't want to be there any confusion that this is a safety program. I think the need is for actual enforcement. of the traffic laws.
Okay. I'm not,
We have a motion and a second. Is there anything else? Susan? No?
so the reason that he would be on a motorcycle is so that he could catch up with traffic and give tickets, as opposed to riding an electric bike.
I'll tell you what, enforcement on a motor, I'm sorry.
Is he doing? He's on a motorcycle so that he can enforce car traffic,
Right.
as opposed to just going around campus.
Right. No, I'm talking about enforcing traffic laws.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see more police on bicycles whenever that's when that's doable on electric bikes.
Okay.
Not in this case.
Is there anything else before we have a vote on the motion? If not, is there any objection to the motion?
No.
Okay, motion then passes. We will now go to I. Is that also yours, Bill?
Yeah, really quick. I have no problem, and I've talked to James about this in terms. I understand the waiving of the penalties, but I'm not sure that we want to word this in terms of deferring payment. And what I was wondering about, if we just had the recommendation that the resolution waive penalties for February, March, and April, but not specifically defer payment.
Okay, I second that.
So it would be defer payment penalties. That's what I'm hearing.
Or say that. Yeah.
Do what?
We're talking about waiving late payment penalties, but we don't want to defer payment, giving them the idea that they don't have to pay it. You know,
I totally agree.
Yeah.
But just what's the difference?
well, the difference is officially blessing them not paying, as opposed to maintaining the expectation that you should pay. But we're going to be gracious and not charge you a penalty if you pay late.
I'm just saying, if my rent doesn't have a late penalty, when's it due?
This is structured to only defer it to a date certain, as proposed to June 30th, not forever.
Okay. Well, anyway, I draw a distinction. And I was just
I don't disagree. What about rather than making it indefinite? Is it 30 days or is it indefinite in here, James?
No,
Until June 30th.
What page is that stated on?
So not till, but for May 1st, it would be June 30th, which is 2 months, not 1 month.
Well, the way it reads is to
Yeah.
defer payment of February, March, and April until June
That's
30th.
true. Yeah, it's all the months before. That's true, Bill. It does.
I don't like that.
All right. Yeah. I mean, my personal opinion is if you need a couple extra weeks to get it done, it's held in trust. It's collected for our purposes. If you can't get somebody to calculate it because of COVID and
Right.
it takes a couple extra weeks, no problem. We shouldn't charge 10%. We have an onerous penalty.
That's what I'm saying.
But that would give you 45 days from the close of the month. I would amend the motion to say you're exempt from any penalties until the extra 15 days into the following month. I just don't know I just don't know why you would need any longer than that and you have the money in your hand.
Are you okay with that, James?
Well, so I want to make sure I understand. So that would mean that February is due then.
Well, shoot, I guess we got the back months too. I mean, it's so
Yeah.
confusing.
February and March
I don't
are
wanna penalize
currently
anybody.
due.
I just don't like. I want to make it clear, and I've told people in this community who collect this money and ask me as a council member, I don't support you holding our money in trust any longer than you need to, but I do appreciate you having a little bit of extra time to get it calculated right and get the check written because you can't get to somebody. So to me, that feels like 2 weeks. That being said, I wouldn't want to penalize anybody up to now who hasn't paid, my personal opinion. But moving forward, at the end of the month, coming in at the end of this week, I would think that.
I was going for Occam's razor, Ryan. If you have another language,
Yes, if all else is equal, yes, the most rational situation would make sense. But I would just say, not any amount that is due as of now is due on June 15th. And any amount that's due at the end of May that would be June, that's due future, which would be June 30th or whatever it's due at the end of May, a month later would be given a 15-day extension. All due dates are given a 15-day extension moving forward, and everything else that's due is due 15 days later than normal and becomes due upon the 15th of May or June.
So your motion is for a 15-day extension to waive late penalties until when?
Yeah. Well, I mean, James, I haven't talked. Is there a reason? I didn't know this was, I mean, I read it in the packet, but was there some impetus for this? Is there somebody who needs this more than others?
So we found that the last month that we collected, we had about half of the hoteliers pay and half took the option to waive the late payment. And we just know that this month, nothing changed really as far as, the time period we're talking about, nothing reopened. So we did bring this, there wasn't a specific request. We brought this with that in mind, that nothing had changed in that month. Businesses weren't able to reopen. So it's just extending the same thing we had originally done.
Well, I mean, are there still February TOT that's still due, or has it all been paid?
For February, there's one. For March, there is about half of them have not paid yet.
Well, I guess what I would say then, my motion would be all delinquent get 15-day notices that it's time to pay. Okay. Moving forward, everybody's given an extra 15-day grace period on the 10%. That would be my motion.
Until when?
Till James lifts this son of a bitch and we're 60 days after it, or whatever sunset clause we want.
Okay. And that'll be I'll second that motion until a son of a bitch. Yeah.
Sorry.
Perhaps
I'm getting tired of being
I don't think anybody could.
I'm referring to, I'm now COVID. Yeah, COVID is officially SOB in my life. I apologize.
All right.
But yes, until the emergency is lifted for the pandemic.
Okay. I'm okay with that. I'll second that.
Okay, is the city manager clear on whatever it is that Bill's okay with?
Yeah, delinquent are due 15 days from tomorrow, basically, and then any upcoming one has a 15-day extension. That's my understanding.
Until the stay-at-home order is lifted.
Or James, to make it easier, June 15th on the due date for the stuff moving forward.
Okay.
So that's a clean date. So everybody's not confused. And then everything else is 15 days after the normal due date.
Okay.
So, Mayor, are we bringing this resolution back at the next council session? Is that what we're doing?
I don't know.
Let's pass it here.
you can approve it now.
That's
We'll rewrite it to match what you approve.
Yeah.
And
I
we'll
don't think we needed to come back.
Let's vote.
I think we've overserviced the account already.
Let's vote.
Okay, is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none? Okay. Do I need a roll call on this one, Mr. City Attorney, because it's money, or does it make a difference?
Because it was originally on the consent calendar, we're okay with no objections.
Okay. I hear no objections. Motion carries. Okay, that takes us to item J. That is Souza. Souza Levis.
Yes. Oh, Susie, you have us on mute.
I don't see her on video either. Or do we have a limited number of gallery?
You're on mute.
We're still,
Roll left, Johnny, if you want to see her.
you're still on. Councilmember Fitzini, you're on mute.
The host unmuted.
I can hear you.
The host interfered. I have it down. I mute. Sometimes my dog barks so loud. Okay, so I looked at the City of Ventura website, the 10 pages of all their protocols and everything. And we're pretty much in line, I think, except for the more strict rules on the masks, and which I go along with to keep the peace. I don't believe that the science on all of that is in yet, but I don't think it hurts. And especially since we have so many visitors, I think it's probably a wise decision. But my main question is, how does, like, for example, I have the 10 key protocols for Ojai restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
Say that they opened up how many days ago, the restaurants?
They started opening Friday.
On Friday, because I was in town Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but I didn't order anything. Mm-hmm. So have you heard any, have you gotten any feedback?
Yeah, and we're being pretty aggressive is the wrong word. I don't mean it in a negative way, but we've had our staff, we've had our assistant city manager and our community development people reaching out and actually going out and talking to businesses. So we're making sure, I think part of your question was probably like, how are we getting that information out, and are we sure that they're hearing it? We've been going out daily to try to get in touch with each business as they open. The county had they had the view that they were trying to get these businesses reopened. So if the business wanted to reopen this weekend and needed to take a couple days to get in a plan together, the county was going to allow them to open this weekend. But we were a little more aggressive. We went out Friday and met with businesses and gave them the 10 key protocols, with the idea being that it's a checklist, and gave them signage for face coverings and all those types of things. So we've talked to several businesses, and so far positive reaction from them, but we've talked to a lot of them. There's been a few businesses who said they aren't going to reopen yet because they're getting their employees back, or they're getting the protocols in place, but we've had several that opened with those.
Okay, no, my concern was not so much you checking on them. Mm-hmm. My concern was, can they really function with all these protocols? That's my concern.
Yeah.
Well, and if we run into problems, for how long is this? Mm-hmm. Do you not know yet, or how long do you anticipate?
How long are these protocols in place?
Yeah, what do you anticipate?
I think it's too soon to tell how long they'll be in place. And that's what I'll add is the 10 protocols. That was kind of our goal, was to simplify it and make it very easy. The one from the county is 10 pages of Excel spreadsheets.
I saw that.
Yeah. So we were trying to really make it simple and give them 10 key points. But to your point, a couple of business owners told us that they couldn't get set up to meet the county's requirements in time for this weekend. So we're seeing some of that. Yeah, we are seeing that that's a problem.
James, how many inquiries? Well, also, I just want to say, I mean, we'll start talking about it now, but this isn't an agenda item. This is in the consent calendar, Susan. So this is a separate agenda item. I think we're talking about the same thing. But I was curious how many restaurants have reached out on the, zoning clearance for getting outdoor space.
We've had 4 so far.
I know OBC looked. I saw them cordon off when I drove by there. They had the parking lot just roped off. I assume is that part of what we're talking about?
Yeah, OBC actually hasn't contacted us yet. So we're going out when we see somebody's getting ready. We're making sure we talk to them. But we've had 4 that actually came in and got their zone.
Yeah, they could have been repainting. So don't get me wrong. I could be totally wrong. I did see a rope around it. Only 4 so far, though. But all right. I mean, yeah. I know there were only probably, I don't know how many were open this weekend, but I know cost a lot. I mean, there were probably only 4 that I could definitely say opened right away. Yep. Talking to some of the restaurant owners, I think they were caught a little bit by surprise. I don't think they were aware that it was going to happen that quickly.
Yep. I think that's
right, Mayor.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, Ryan. I think we started the meeting with you citing a change that had happened 15 minutes ago. So that's how fast this ball's rolling. All I know is that Bill and I and Jamie and James here and we've had numerous discussions on this, and there's a complete buy-in by the business community that we're hearing. And I think the shout out has to go to Jamie and his staff. James for it's not aggressive, it's proactive.
Proactive, better word.
But it's the fact that we're engaging the community and we're getting a positive response. So whatever we're doing right. And regarding our masking, whatever we're doing there, we're doing right. So I think our first responders have just asked for one thing. While they're working diligently to protect and to save people that come into their environment, they're asking us to do the same in our environment. So it's a win-win.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Okay, is anything else on item J? Are we ready to have a motion to approve? Or?
One more question. Now, we're going to discuss this further under the COVID update on the agenda. Mm-hmm. But if we approve this, my only hesitation is, once it's approved, it stands unless the state or the county mandates something different. Is that correct?
Or unless the city manager takes further action,
Yeah.
which would then be ratified by the council, or could be ratified by the council.
Okay, but the council can't ratify it in the future?
Well, I would say this doesn't expand or limit the city council's ability or the city manager's ability to do anything later. This just confirms that we are as expansive as a community as the state will allow us and the county will allow us at this moment.
And anything you approve tonight, you can always rescind later if you wish.
All right.
Although that doesn't change the period of validity for now.
Okay, so, but when we go to the next item, when we go to the COVID item, then I can discuss what I saw regarding children and masks in the park and all
Okay,
that.
if you'd like, why don't we postpone the action on this item until we finish the COVID discussion? Is that
That'd be reasonable.
okay?
We can do that.
Any
That's
objection to doing that?
Mr. Mayor, that's a wonderful idea. That's
Oh,
what a creative,
thank you, Ryan.
well played, sir. Well played.
Okay, we have now reached the point of public comment, and I have number.
Mayor, just one second though. Did we approve J and I?
Yes.
Yes.
Not Jay.
No, not
Jay.
Jay.
Not Jay.
H and I.
H and I.
J is being moved to the consent or to the agenda. Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. There you go.
Okay, we all clear? Okay. Public comment. I've got a summary here that I'll read as far as the number of letters or remarks that were sent into us. And if anybody wants to go in greater detail, but at this critical time of the pandemic, we had 16 comments on pickleball. So lets us all know that hasn't gone away. And they were all favorable to wanting to have pickleball. I think that may be in response to last meeting's comment from a neighbor who didn't want so much of it. We also had comments on our consent agenda about the report on 5G. There were 7 of them, and basically they all don't like it, and I understand why they don't like it, but we don't have any authority over it. I thought the staff report was pretty thorough, explaining that we push this to the limit of, and if I understood correctly, James, so far there are no applications to do that within the city limits, right?
Correct.
Okay, so far no harm, no foul, and so anyway, we know that there's still a lot of folks out there that have concern.
Can we
okay.
go, hang on a second? Can we call attention that there is a city there is a 5G page on the city website,
Yes.
correct?
Yep.
So that they, and this, so, but this is, I think, this is what people want to know, is that there's no applications have been filed.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
Yep.
that's.
Yeah,
within the
and
city.
applications would be on that website if they came in. We just haven't gotten any.
Now, can I ask one more question? When an application comes in, how long do you have to respond? Do we have to respond?
Well, I don't know that off the top of my head. Maybe.
It varies depending on what the application is for. Generally, it's 30, 60, or 90 days, depending on the type of cell tower at issue.
Did you say 30?
Yeah, it can be as short as 30 under applicable law.
30 to 90 days. Okay.
Okay, so Mayor,
Yes. Oh, just a second. Are you done? Susan?
yeah, but Mayor, this is not an agendized item. This is a public comment, correct?
But I actually meant to pull it from the consent calendar, and
It's not a consent calendar.
It was a,
it's on the consent
It's on
calendar.
the consent item. Yeah.
Yeah,
You asked a question. You got your information. Okay, we're all
Yeah.
done with this?
it's item L. It's item L on the consent calendar.
Well, without making a decision, we can all say this in case anybody wonders. There are no pending applications in the city of Ojai for 5G, and we have previously passed a regulation that, according to our city manager, is as strictly prohibitive to 5G as we're allowed to be as a city. And with that, I think that's probably the end of anything we need to discuss.
And 30 to 90 day processing if an application should come in. So,
Yeah.
As well.
okay, we're done with that. So let's go to the item number 2, which is the budget workshop. James.
Yeah, so I will give a brief introduction, and then we'll have the Public Works Director walk through the actual CIP projects for the upcoming year. But in short, we all know that this year is going to be a challenging budget year. It would have been the type of year in the past where we would have likely ended up deferring maintenance to try to balance our budget. One positive thing, although we haven't gotten to enjoy it yet, but one positive is we have Measure C passed earlier this year, and that should allow us, once hotels get operating again, to continue to catch up on deferred maintenance rather than cutting back this year. And so with that, last council meeting, we had laid out what we were expecting to receive in revenues. We noted that it's a tough year to project, and revenues may be less or more than we are projecting at this point based on how this reopening goes. But we had projected a little bit. I think it was like about an 8% decrease of TOT revenues, which also means the Measure C would go in line with that TOT and would be like less than it would have been originally. But we anticipate that we may receive, I believe it was 1.5 million or so in Measure C if things reopen as we are hoping, and as things seem to be picking up here in recent days. So the bulk of the CIP this year will be based on that Measure C funding. Just real quick, when we passed Measure C, we had talked about certain key areas. Road maintenance, so a large portion of the funding is proposed to go to road maintenance, parking lots maintenance and projects, fire protection and code compliance, climate mitigation, building maintenance, and park and tree maintenance are some of the areas that we're going to focus on this year with that Measure C funding, or that we are proposing to focus on with that Measure C funding. And with that, I see Councilmember Francina has a question.
Yeah, the question is, I heard you say parking lots.
I think you're on mute.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So sorry.
I can hear her. Now you're on mute.
I don't hear anybody. Uh-oh, what happened?
If she wasn't on mute, James, you confused everybody.
Is dead, maybe?
Oh, I think.
Yeah, speaker's on mute.
Okay. Am I on? Can you hear me?
I
Okay.
can hear you.
Okay.
Hold on. Susan, hold on. James can't hear
Are
anything.
you hearing it?
James, you can't hear anything. He can't hear me. Trust me. You can message him. I'll text message him. Hold on.
So I've lost sound on my end, so I guess I will hand off to Greg Grant if he can hear you while we try to get our sound fixed.
Right. Well, can everybody hear me? This is Greg Grant.
We can hear you. We can hear you, Greg.
Okay, terrific.
At least I can, I should say.
I only had a very simple question, Greg. When I heard James say parking lots, you're talking about parking lot maintenance because we haven't any parking lots.
Yes, and I think James just joined me in here, so we're going to try to. I think we both had our temperatures checked and we're in good shape.
Speed,
right?
boys.
And I'll turn up the volume so you can hear it here. I guess you lost the. Yeah. Really? Okay. Anyways, yes, Souza, Councilman Francina, that yes, that parking lot is strictly maintenance. That's for crack filling and blacktopping parking lots.
That's all I wanted to know. I just want to make sure that nothing was approved behind my back.
Nothing's been
Like a new parking lot.
Okay, James.
Okay, I think we're ready to go through the CIP. And everybody on this agenda item, there's a first section, attachment B, which has a review of the funds. I don't think we really need to go there. That's got a recap of where the revenues and expenditures for each type of funds we have at the city. So I'm not really going to touch on that unless there's a question. That wasn't
Obviously,
really my main intention.
Greg, I'm going to have a couple questions.
Okay.
Are you on page 205, attachment B, 104? What page are you on?
Attachment B would be all the fund review.
And you didn't want to review those?
I'd be glad to go through them. I was mostly focused on CIP, but I'd be glad to go through them.
My only question on this was the ATP funding you have in here.
And I'll go into that in detail in CIP if that helps more.
Okay, I'll wait then.
Okay. So if we go to attachment C, page 1, there is a summary of the funds, and I'll do a screen share. Okay, right here. And so hopefully, can everybody see my screen? See a cursor moving here?
Yeah, I can see.
Did you say attachment C?
Yes, attachment C to this item.
I don't have an, I don't see.
1 of 5. Page
Page
1.
1 of 5. But if you, I'm sharing screen and I'm looking at the exact same thing, if that's easier.
Okay.
So sharing the screen, you can see the green column H. I'm trying to, hopefully you can see this pointer just fine and see the column here. So that's the projected fiscal year 2021 that we're planning. And you can see the Fund 31, we typically call it the Capital Improvement Fund, which now includes other funding sources like Measure C, and I'll run through it here. So we're starting at a negative balance this year because shortages we've had related to the COVID issue and TOT. We're starting with a negative 108,000 to start. And we've got revenues coming in with Measure C here of 1.3 million, 1.289,500 is proposed for next year. We've got TOT at 121,400 coming in. That has been, per James's review, that's been redirected because of the financial crisis related to COVID again. So that money's been, instead of being 20% to the TOT, it's been just a very small amount of it. There's transfer from other funds. We've got things like AB 939 and other deferred revenue funds we'll hit in detail in the CIP. We've got grant money coming in. You can see that there for about $1.46 million. Donations for total revenues of $3.4 million. So the total available is $3.38 million of revenues. Our expenditures, this is a nice recap of the CIP. The expenditures proposed for next year is $1,020,000. For parks, we plan to spend $530,000. Complete streets, $1 million. Parking lots, as Councilman Francina mentioned, $60,000. Facilities, $585,000. Drainage and minor, $23,000.
Greg,
total
real quick,
expenditures. Yes.
Before we get too far, sorry, I don't know how to interrupt you. I apologize. Parks going from 50 to 500. What's the 10 times increase about?
That's primarily two things. That light pole work is started, but most of it kicks in next year. And the futsal outdoor basketball multi-use sport courts.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And James, your complete streets, does that tie into your grant funding up top?
Yes. And that's shown better when I go to that CIP detail. You can see the expenditures parallel to the where the revenues are coming from.
My question would be, why aren't the grant funds put in their own, technically their own column, and then how they're utilized or the expenses that come out of them aren't in their own separate entity? It seems like we're bunching them in with all CIP versus these grants actually are entirely different. In fact, some of them have some matching details, like Regina's, God, I'm losing, Progressive, what she changed her name.
Watershed Progressive, correct. Yep.
Yeah, so she has matching funds in that we can actually utilize city staff to match funds for what's required. How do you account for that in these expenditures?
The detail.
They need to be having their own. They need to be in their own entity so that we can
kind of as a project. I think this is a high level summary, and the detail that I hit next will show that kind of detail I believe that you're looking for. So this one's kind of high level, basically saying total revenues coming in at 3.49 million, total expenses going out at 3.2 million, and then you can see the ending balance is 117,000 positive. And then if I can flip over to this detail spreadsheet, this has got, let me see if I can minimize this. So everybody can still hopefully see my screen, and I think this helps out what Councilman Haney's asking for. All right, so the first project we'll hit is road overlay. the total road overlay is in this column 34 for this fiscal year is $1,020,000. This is the higher level, just total expenditures. And then if you hop over this gray line here, you see the source of those funds. So for the road overlay proposed of $1,020,000 next year, we've got this $900,000, which is Measure C, and then we've got $120,000 from gas tax. So that's this roll up shown right here. This Measure C is $900,000, other funds of $120,000, and those are still broken out down below. But for each project, you can see what we're talking about here, and I think that's what you're asking for, Councilman Haney, and it'll show that with the ATP project further down. So if we move on, I'll just hit these green areas. Under parks, we're talking $22,000 for the turf hill at Libby. This is Libby Park. And that is for the repair of that. We've had it hanging there. It's not in the greatest shape, but it's not in terrible shape. So that quite a few of the seams on that artificial turf have pulled apart slightly, but it seems to work for the kids out there. But we are proposing to rebuild it with an official AstroTurf outdoor carpeting, which is a little faster type of material, a type of nylon. We've got the initial sewer line pump for the restroom project that's being planned. We've got the pergola timber.
Greg, I hate to interrupt you. What about that swale problem we have? Is that the same thing we're looking at? The problem with the swale we've got in the sewer line that's been bedeviling us for decades?
Yes,
So where
is.
are you talking about?
He's talking about in the park right now. There's a
Oh, okay, I know what you're talking about.
that right. It's a sewer line that combines. It even pulls over from the Nomad Gallery and a couple of those places. Combine that commercial sewer lines with the city's park, and then it runs directly west over by the Topa Street over there, Topa Drive.
But it's going to be another year before we fix that?
Yes.
Is that going to involve a macerating pump? Lift station?
Yes.
Okay.
It would be a manhole in the middle of the park that grinds up the goodies and pumps it with pressure with a line inserted in the main line. So it'd be under pressure instead of gravity.
I'm sorry to see it wait another year.
Yeah. I know it's been kind of a back burner. I mean, it's level C. It's been that way for, 40, 80 years somewhere. It's an old gravity line that it's not ideal. It dips underneath that, what is that, Lovell Park right there, the picnic area. It dips underneath that. So it's a potential clog area, but it hasn't happened. So it didn't seem to be a high priority for us.
Okay. Sorry.
And out front, we've got the pergola timber, which is deteriorating. We've got quotes on plastic timber. It's expensive to even get samples of it. We want to put a sample of it out first and then make sure everybody's good with it for appearance-wise and so on. And then it's a more expensive material. But Councilman Wyrick had asked us to look into this last year, and it will have a long life with it if we're all good with the appearance.
In other words, we'll all be dead before it rots, as opposed to the wood.
Well, I think along with that, Bill, though, there's some aesthetics that go along with it, and composites aren't the cat's meow that they used to be. So I'm not sure if it's 100% plastic is what we want to put up in our public facilities, but I'd be willing to look at it.
That's what I'm saying. We just see a sample.
And I was proposing, we'll buy a large timber and a smaller timber. And it's similar material to what we have at the Libby Playground, which is much better than it used to be.
Right.
But it still might not quite look what you're looking for out there, look like what you're looking for.
Yeah, it's like very similar to the playground material.
Yes. So that was Libby Park. If we move on down here, we'll hit Sarzati Park. And the Field 1 light poles, 91,000. The outdoor basketball futsal courts, 327. So the detail helps further over. And you can see Measure C is helping with the light poles. We've got other funds from the Ojai Civic Association that are matching, providing grant funding for that donation. And then for the outdoor basketball futsal courts, it's all other funding. That would be the presumption that this Prop 68 grant application we're putting in soon would be successful and pay for that along with a donation from the Ojai Civic Association that we're hoping for.
And if that doesn't materialize, then the project's on hold?
Yes, it would be brought back to council for consideration whether there's hopeful recovery in the economy. We might look at other options with measure C or TOT.
Randy had his hand up.
I'm at Sarasota Park a lot. Greg, I don't see anything on here in the park for Sarasota regarding all the stucco that's peeling off the building, all the wood that's rotted. What are we doing as far as outside maintenance on that structure? I don't see a line item for it.
Are you talking about the gym or the Boyd Center?
All of them.
The Boyd Center we painted a few years ago, so that should be in good condition. The gym is it's mostly stucco, but I'm sure some of that wood is about coming up. So we could add that. That's a good item to add. Not maybe this immediate year, but a year or two out, we'll take a good look at that.
So, yeah, I know there's a lot to cover here, but just real quick, who assesses that? You or your lead man? Who actually walks the facility and inspects it, and then comes back with some type of a job order so that you're informed as to the conditions of these facilities?
We have listed all this equipment over the years, so it's always been myself working with the maintenance super, and so it's kind of a combination of the two, and possibly departments or otherwise.
I have a question.
So again, that's kind of a vague answer. Do you do a monthly inspection? Do you do an annual inspection?
We do. For instance, that building, I can't say we do an annual inspection on the exterior of that. We're generally aware between the people who are there day and night and other maintenance staff and myself, and we know what needs to be done. So it is vague because it really varies on each facility that we have out there. I would say that for Rec's facilities, generally Rec takes lead on it. They're usually pushing for repairs, and the Rec commission as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure if recreation directors or recreation people understand the construction practices of rehabbing a building, decaying wood, decaying stucco, decaying paint. My suggestion is you might put on an annual basis to inspect these facilities. I would think someone would be doing that.
Okay.
Right. Be glad to add that to an annual inspection. We could do that. For instance, the Boyd Center, we were quite aware that was deteriorating. We put that on a hot list a few years ago. And the gym, I wasn't aware it was that bad. I know it's deteriorating, but be glad to do an inspection and try to include it with this, at least in the 5-year schedule.
Susan had a question. Do you still have a question, Susan?
I do. Do you have any idea what the water park element would be if we had the money?
The what?
No. I mean, we had some ideas brought up when the master plan was developed, and there was some interest in looking at other cities, what kind of elements they had. But the cost varied from simple, what we did at Libby Park, to extravagant, kind of what they have at Casitas Lake there. So you can go anything from, $10,000 up to hundreds of thousands of dollars easily. So highly variable. And because of the drought, it seems like it's always been very much a back burner.
Yeah, but on the other hand, with the heat, we have the mister in Libby Park. I mean, it seems like at least Sarasota Park could have a mister. The kids just love that. If somebody would donate the money. I
mean, that one was just built with city staff, so that was pretty simple. Pretty small amount of water. It's got those misters. I think we keep it on only during the real hot periods in the middle of the day. We have a timer set up on it. So it's
fabulous. On a hot day when it's working, all the kids are running through that, and it allows them to play without getting overheated. It's just such a great feature. That's all they have unless they get into the fountain in Libby Park. And I just feel like Ojai somehow, I know this is not the right time to get more money for anything unless I think mothers would donate for something like that. We could. It's almost essential in the heat as a way to keep kids cool. At least we should be able to, if we had a plan. I should bring this before the recreation department.
Yeah.
Probably.
Okay. The answer to the question is it's not in there, and we don't.
Yeah, it's not in there. But anyway, I'll try to pursue it with the rec department.
Okay, and I just highlighted this row.
I got,
Sorry,
are you done?
And just to mention that new playground I've highlighted there, that's out a couple of years. So that'd be fiscal year 23 and 24. The new playground would presumably have a feature. But in the meanwhile, if we want to do something like at Libby Park, our staff could build it and hook up the water line. It'd probably be a couple of week effort between the water line and the construction.
So that's not too hard.
Yeah, okay. Randy, did you? Randy,
So I just want to go back, and Greg, I don't want to harp on this, but I am. You have to do a playground inspection sheet on a monthly basis on all of our play equipment. Am I correct?
Yes.
So why isn't the individual that's doing that actually walking the facility and doing an inspection sheet then? Can we ask him to do that or her to do that?
Okay, you're asking right now, and the staff will get back to us on that. Let's go back to the budget. I agree with you, Randy. It should be routine. We'll get an answer back for you.
Thank you, Mayor.
And just to make sure you broke up there, which was not ideal, but I think you were asking when we do playground inspections, could we do a facility inspection, right?
Best time to do it.
Yeah. Request Greg to have a regular, maintenance inspection of some sort, or
Okay.
a reason why we can't. So, okay, go on with your presentation, please.
Okay, so our parks total is $530,000. Moving on to, let's see, complete streets. You can see $10,000. We have a Grand Avenue Bike Lane TDA grant from years ago that was kind of sitting out. It's really been put on a priority B because we have so many other projects going on with limited staff. So this is kind of to possibly get into planning that in the next fiscal year and then actually stripe it in the next year or two afterwards. And that was the one that had options like you could remove parking on the south side that a lot of residents have made very vocally clear that they were not interested in that. And other people thought we might be able to trial it for a bit. And there's options such as that, but there's not enough width in that curb to curb as it exists right now to properly stripe it. So there was not an easy answer out there that could be designed in and striped. It was going to be kind of a major outreach effort where the community would be super involved and be quite a diversion. It'd be hard to finish some of these other projects which have grant deadlines on. Jumping down below to the bike trail bridge at Fox Canyon Branca, that was also almost similar. I think when this came up last year, we have this grant funding, which is not disappearing on us. There's no deadlines on it. So that's a priority C, that we take that existing horse bridge right next to the end of Fox Street and make it wider for bikes. And I think last year it was asked, can we flip this funding and extend the bike trail through Soul Park? We investigated that, and it was not going to be an easy option for that fund flip. So it still sits at this widened bike bridge at that Fox Canyon Branca. This is the one I think that Councilman Haney was looking for.
Well,
Okay,
hold on.
I think
I gotta
Susan
get
had a
back.
question.
Craig, I got to stop you there. What do you mean the Soul Park thing is off the table? Like, what was so hard about that? I've talked about it. We've talked about it very recently in the context of the Condor self-storage and the easement back there and wanting to connect it through. So there, and it's not very far. There's an easement that's clearly delineated. What do I not know?
Okay, so I think one thing is having the right of way, and that Condor self-storage would be a great potential project. If we obtain that right of way, that would get a little strip north-south. There's still an east-west strip that goes through the maintenance area of the facility.
But without anything right now, doesn't it already exist without Condor too?
That easement in there right now, so I guess there's a couple issues. Is the right-of-way width. Right now, the county does not support a bike lane through there. They say it's only 10 foot for horses, and they feel it'd be unsafe to combine the horses and bikes in that same 10-foot strip. So they're not supportive of converting what we have out there for right-of-way, because that...
Get out of here, seriously?
Yeah, and plus, it's not safe. There's no safe way it's not safe to ride that bridge to Soul Park. That can kill you.
Well, I think our original intention was only to get from the end of the existing bike path a little bit north, and then you hit the Whispering Oaks cul-de-sac and then go east over to the driveway. That was our goal, and just to connect to that driveway. And that one does not have the support from the county.
You know, the county owns that property, Greg. Do you ever remind them that we're trying to connect a bike path to their own damn property that they make their own damn money off of for every dollar that's spent there? It might be in our city limits, but they do own the damn thing.
Right. I said it something like that.
I just want to make sure I know. I know. But it is ridiculous. Like, and I talked to Keith, who operates the golf course. He, in fact, I rode my bike, frankly, on Monday on that back path. I rode right down, off of, what would it be, Bryant, right past the Humane Society. Then you get to the end of that road and you have to turn left and it turns into all rocks. It's horribly done. There's exactly about a 10-foot path. It goes up, makes a right turn, and then goes over to where the golf course is. You can go down and it suddenly turns into kind of wood chips all the way down to Ojai Avenue. There's no way to get through the fence. And which is so ironic to me that a county path that comes through the entire county, through multiple cities and, not unincorporated area, ends in a spot where you can't physically get around a fence to be able to go to the county property that is there. I just really hope we can figure this out.
Bill has a question.
I
Bill?
just want to just reiterate what you're saying, Ryan. The county has a master plan goal of connecting recreation areas in the county to bike trails. That's in their master plan. That's a general plan goal, as well as an adopted master plan. So again, Greg, what I don't understand is when there's an administrative decision, which is, we should point out and try to push the fact that those administrative decisions are inconsistent with the county's own adopted plan.
Yeah, and on top of that, Bill, we're not talking about a long distance.
Right.
Frankly, we're talking about 10 feet wide and over what I would guess to be 80 yards. I know it's not cheap, but it's not free. But
there's an adopted policy goal. There's an adopted policy goal by the county that says to do just that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I want to point out
a workshop if we're going to get into that kind of detail tonight, guys.
Maybe I could just throw in the extra point.
Johnny, you know the golf. You know what that corner of the golf course on the side of Whispering Oaks is as well as anyone.
Yeah.
You know that it makes no sense that we have a bike path that goes everywhere. That's really well done. And then all of a sudden you want to take it the extra, 200 feet to go to a county facility to actually end at a recreational spot. You can't get across it because of rocks. And then you got to, literally I rode up it on my bike, but I had to physically pick my bike over and my girlfriend's bike over the fence just to get over to Slow Park.
I had the same experience, Ryan. I couldn't believe that I was suddenly stuck back there. So
Randy, help me on this.
Yes.
We're going to be
No.
Okay.
Hold on,
Guys,
hold
you
on,
got
hold
the
on.
message.
On this.
I'll be glad to meet or talk with you individually as to what some of the complications are. We don't have
So,
extra.
the only, I would just like to chime in. This is so interesting, Greg, that all of us are out and about more than you probably want us to be. But I was on the bike path too this weekend, and I found it deplorable. I don't know what part we maintain and what part the county maintains, but I'd sure appreciate some type of information on that because the maintenance on it is just horrendous. So having
a quick answer, Councilman Haney, is that Fox Street all the way to the end at the golf course is maintained by the city. I think you'll find that significantly better. We've done crack fill and got rid of the bumps through that whole section and blacktopped it. So from Fox Street back through the city is all maintained by the county. We tried to request gently pressure the city to the county to please improve that better. There's all kinds of root bumps.
Well,
there was kind of a dream that if Measure C was working out, we might consider getting involved in the maintenance of that to try to support it. At this point, that appears to be a pullback.
well, again, to me, it's part of that. It's part of that is having someone actually look at our facilities that we're accountable for and that we own, and have them do an inspection, because I saw, as far as the surfacing, I would probably give it a 5 or a 6, but all of the leaf debris and the sand debris and the dirt debris, people walking, people riding bikes, people sliding, people tripping, there's just a multitude of things that I think that we could do better. Now, I'm not telling you to go do it tomorrow, but I'm saying someone needs to inspect that and someone needs to put it on some type of annual maintenance program, whether it's weekly, monthly, or bi-monthly, but sorry to chime in, but
right, just to point it out again, it's Fox Street to the end, east end is the city's. I think you'll find that substantially better.
It is nicer, Greg, until you get to the end next to the Humane Society, that you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Dirt path by the golf course. Yeah, that would be bad.
And it's not to connect that many people there, but even if you end up there, I can't tell you how many people I've seen stuck there, and they frankly enjoy it because they look over the animals at the Humane Society, so they have something to do. But you're stuck at the end in this weird spot that you can continue and you can't. And frankly, if you could continue, you could only spend money at a county facility or make it back to Ojai Avenue easily. Anyway.
Two questions. Hello. Can you hear me? Can I ask two questions, Mr. Mayor?
Are we on the same topic?
Yes, same topic. So
well, I'm hoping that we're not, because I think we've beaten this to death.
This is a question I get all the time.
Okay, go ahead and ask the question. It'll be faster.
So, Greg, why does our part start at Fox Street? Why doesn't it start like at the Ojai Valley Inn?
The reason is when it was first built by the county, they received the funding and they built that initial portion. And then from Fox Street to the east is when the city obtained the right of way and extended that.
Okay.
And keep in mind that, yeah, on one side, they maintain it. You might see them out there on weekends all the time. That post and rail fence is always falling apart and they're fixing it constantly. It's about, what is it now, 25, 30 years old. And then the pavement itself is at that age it's like a lot of our city streets up at 30 years in bad shape. So really there's no great funding source.
Concerned about the condition of the bike path. Staff will look into it, give us a report back on what can or cannot be done. I don't think we're going to solve the thing tonight.
I agree, Mayor.
Yeah.
Okay. But I had a question when Greg quickly glossed over the Grand Avenue bike lanes, and I still want to ask Greg. You made a comment about the people not being happy about removing parking, but this is part of the budget, right? I mean, where does this stand? Where did the Grand Avenue, because we've been trying to do that since 1996. So what is the status? I want to be real clear on that.
I would refer back to the Complete Streets Master Plan, and I think there's about 7 options from Sharrows, which are out there, to trying to stripe it in certain ways that are quasi-adequate. They pretty much require losing parking on one side of Grand Avenue, and then there's more expensive options where you actually move the curb to create the extra space that's needed. Very, very expensive, up in the
but you are
several
saying
$100,000.
that if parking is removed on one side, that then there's room for bike lanes on both sides, and the kids could finally get safely to Topa Topa School. Is that correct?
That's in the master plan as one of the options.
Yeah.
For $10,000.
If we had the political will and we went and we explained things to the residents, it could be done. That is
certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
so I will take it down to the ATP project here that you can see, for instance, so this again is the general funding. This is just the total expenditures proposed next year. So we've got the ATP minor things with still some programming consultant support and some outreach support. We've got NEPA, because this has federal funding. That's a Environmental Protection Act. So it's CEQA, NEPA, the provisions, but it's moreover the right-of-way, ROW, meaning right-of-way. This project has places where the sidewalk touches private property, and we need temporary construction easements and sometimes minor acquisitions. So that's the funding there. So, and also to address Councilman Haney's, for instance, here, this 3 funding sources we have, either Fund 31, Measure C, or other funds. You can see other funding underneath here. So that's the ATP subsidized and matched by CMAQ and by CMAQ, let's see, and there's some TVA funding. So none of these are Measure C or Fund 31. They're all other funding, other grant funding sources.
Greg, I appreciate that explanation too. I see it more clearly. But here's my question: the money that we've spent today out of city coffers, what, 130,000 plus the last 11,500. Where is that accounted for in this in this representation here?
This is accounted for, at least in the fiscal year we're in right now, is right here. this this consulting, outreach, right-of-way issues, and then the design support is all here under Fund 31. The Fund 31, the grant funding, we're proposing that next meeting would actually cover that. It's a TDA funding source, but that is pretty much either ATP or CMAC, those two right there, or else Fund 31, which pulls from this, the CIP capital. But like, as I'm saying, we have a funding mechanism which can cover
again,
that.
I just want to understand this better. And again, this might be something, Mayor, I'll say this firsthand. If I need to understand this better, I'm more than willing to sit down with Greg and James to get a better perspective of it. But I just would like to be able to identify where the money comes from. Is it grant money or is it city money? And if it's city money, did we authorize those expenditures? And that's the information I'd like to see now versus saying, well, we just took the money from Fund 31. Who authorized us taking the money from Fund 31? So I think I'd like to maybe have an in-depth discussion with you, and then maybe agendize it and have you come back to council with a better understanding of AT expenditures.
Okay.
Mayor?
I'll add to that real quick that we were asked at the last meeting to bring an ATP full discussion summary back at an upcoming meeting. That's scheduled for next council meeting.
Thank you, James.
Yeah,
In the interim, can you and I and Greg meet and go over this?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, onward and downward. Let's see, we've got the parking lots. I don't know how interesting you find that, but it is, I think, along the lines of, again, what Councilman Haney's asking for. We routinely inspect those and watch the condition of those deteriorate.
Parking lots, particularly the lower Libby, they got half done.
Yep. And we were
in the budget to continue and get the other half done.
Yes. Should be able to find it. Lower Libby. Lower Libby is actually planned right here and then it's pushed out, not this immediate fiscal year, but the next fiscal year. This shows the money we just spent on the half parking lot. The other half that is more lightly used is due for a slurry coat with some rework next fiscal year. Okay. Not the one we're planning, 21-22.
And don't we have a slurry coating machine?
No,
we don't actually. That in the vehicle replacement, we were going to buy a trailer which we can haul liquid slurry in. Yeah. So we could utilize that machine to place a slurry ourselves. Otherwise, we work with a local contractor who works with us to use his slurry trailer.
Thanks for pulling this leg, Randy.
So these in the green though, the West Libby, west of the fountain is due for a slurry. The Rainbow Bridge parking lot at the corner of Signal and Matilaha is due for a slurry. The plaza south of Matilaha is due for a slurry. The police department is. The park and ride is actually, the park and ride was just some crack fill next as a year following when we do the slurry on it. And then the plaza alley was due for one. So a total of $60,000 next year. And then the next category is a new category. It's climate mitigation and fire protection. So this represents the grant funding through California Department of Fish and Wildlife we've secured recently. And so that's the total of those 2 years is $800,000. And so that'll be the area, the canyon, middle Stewart Canyon Creek down below the city hall. And it continues down until it merges with the Fox Canyon Branca down off of Ventura Street. And that's the one I think the council's relatively aware of, removing all the invasive eucalyptus and Mexican fan palms and restoring that with natives. And we work with PAX Environmental and the crew as a team to apply for that project, and recently we're awarded it.
Hey, Greg, again, kudos to you, PAX, everybody involved. If I recall correctly, wasn't that a resubmit after a denial that we weren't sure we were going to get and got a little lucky? And wasn't there kind of a path that wasn't as clean as normal to get there?
Exactly. I think that was the goal of that team, is if we keep refining this and we talk to the grant reviewers and find out where the low scoring points are, we'll refine it and fix it. And it took us about a year and a half, but we got there.
Hey, congratulations, all you guys. Congrats to the guys at PAX. I know everybody involved are a lot of great things. So
it was a good team. Yeah, definitely. PAX over there, Brian Howley, and a few other people there, Colleen, and also I think we had Karen Bossum over at the crew, as well as Jennifer Berry's there now. She's the one that did the final revision on the recent submittal. So great team.
That's awesome. That's a lot of money too. We don't get that's a big grant for us. So, hey, congrats. Well done.
Thanks. Yep. Perfect. I think it'll get rid of the fire risk down there as well as restore it to native,
Keep moving, Greg.
Yep. Okay. All right. So these are more facility areas, fixing the roof. There's the west end over in the community development department needs roof fix. We've got the front arbor, a similar thing to Libby Arbor. We're going to try the plastic timber. We're going to buy a piece or two and see how it looks before we commit to the whole thing, as we've just talked about with Libby. We've got the gazebo roof that's out by the pickleball court out there is deteriorated and ready for rehab. I'm sure the first one in 80 years. And there's a money in as well for a pickleball sound study if it becomes necessary, being budgeted.
Well, that actually should have been revised. We should have caught that. We were budgeting to have some funds to do some sort of sound.
We can't hear you, James.
It shouldn't say pickleball sound study. We had wanted to make sure we had a little bit of funding to do something about sound if we choose to, but it shouldn't have said study. So that's a typo there.
It's mitigation, maybe is a better term.
Yeah.
Mitigation materials.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that will be more of a pickleball mitigation of 15,000 potential.
Yeah.
So facilities 585,000 for drainage. We need to inspect pipes. We have done minor visual inspections with flashlights, but it's hard to get down very far. We need to run some cameras. And a lot of these old corrugated metal pipes, they're up there 60 to 80 years old and they're starting to fail. And we lined a few of them that were in worse shape, but we're trying to keep pursuing and staying on top of it. There's a measure underneath the NPDS nationwide permit, which requires trash excluders on all of the more urban. It's a phased approach we have to take over the next 5 years. So this shows us implementing these trash excluders. You'll start seeing at the curb inlets that we can kick up during storms, but they stay down and catch debris during non-storm periods, primarily trying to catch trash, which we have an inspection routine for the trash as well, required by that permit. And then under transit, we have the $250,000 CMAQ grant to improve trolley stops. It's kind of a low priority that rolls ahead, but we're looking at improving the Weinberger Memorial Garden, Rose Garden trolley stop, seeing if we can modify that. We're looking at a new stop in front of Bank of America, or possibly moving it down a little bit in front of the Westridge. And I think those are some of the primary improvements we're looking at for the trolley stops.
Greg, on that trolley stop at the Weingarten, you might maybe talk to Caltrans and see if they'll finally pave that asphalt for the community. If you're going to do something there, maybe they'll match our funds with something to enhance walkability around that site.
Okay, be glad to look in that. I know we've asked for their support on that, and we have some maintenance money that we can help with that area as well. And it's also in the ATP to look at that improvement. So somewhere between the maintenance monies and the ATP, we're planning to get it repaired.
Susan, you had a hand up? I think you're muted again.
Greg just mentioned that it's in the ATP that we might do some kind of a bike pedestrian path winding through there, right?
Yes.
Where the memorial garden is.
Yes, we're looking at taking, if you were coming from downtown Ojai, moving towards the Y, right when you hit Del Norte, hugging the back of that whole landscaped area up against the Caltrans yard and right up against the Weinberger Memorial and going behind the trolley. So that's what we're hoping to do in the ATP.
There's just a little stretch, about 4 feet, where you're just an inch from the cars, as you go around that little curve. So that, I'm kind of exaggerating, but not much.
Well, I'm sure that'll be in your ATP report. Yes, Greg?
Right. Right, be glad to review that in ATP. That 60% review we're hoping to get to in next month.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Moving
And-
along, Greg.
I'm sorry.
I said moving right along.
Okay.
Next.
Total expenses, $3.3 million. And then this shows the funds. Each one of those was shown if there was any interest in particular. We would generally fund these things under Fund 31 this year with the diversion of those funds to help the financial crisis we're having at the city. It'll be Measure C that helps assure, as city manager reviewed, that we have funding to continue with some of these improvements.
Wait, what is this? Hang on. All these, I saw something about new rugs, new curtains. What is that? Do we need any of that?
In the council chambers, yes, we do have a new dais, curtains and rugs shown out 3 years out.
Oh, that's okay. After we're rich again. Okay. All right.
Not
Did the light committee ever get back to us and make a recommendation?
Where are in the capital budget? Is there anything addressing the climate?
Yes, that was the, I think the whole grant from CDFW behind City Hall. That'll restore the native habitat. So that's both fire resiliency as well as recovering the natural habitat in the water in the back area.
Didn't we have some conversation or at least request? I think there's, I assume it's just to make the point. The people on the climate committee sent a letter in. There are 2 comments regarding, conversion over to something. They were asking for what would basically be the lion's share of Measure C, which isn't going to happen this year. In fact, I think your estimate of Measure C's revenues are probably optimistic, but we don't have anything in the out years that I noticed where things like, a solar farm or converting public works equipment to electric vehicles or anything that gets away from the internal combustion engines where practical. Was there something in there and I missed it?
Well, the vehicle replacement section, again, we didn't get into specificity with it because we don't anticipate having the money this year. But
Right.
the vehicle replacement portion, we've talked about just already, just as a general rule that we're going to replace anything we can with electric equipment. When we're identifying that we are going to replace equipment, we're going to try to replace it with electric equipment.
I assume we'll bring
Manny
that
and
back.
Bill were on some kind of a solar energy committee or something a few months back. That was the rooftops, wasn't it, Bill?
Yep.
Yeah. And are we going to do any of that anyplace?
Couldn't get
So,
the
yeah,
fund.
So we are still working on it. We are actively working on it. We met with a couple of, we had met with, who was it? Forefront, I think was the group we were working with.
Yeah, they decided we weren't big enough for them.
Yeah, and so there were a couple of ideas of, the power purchase agreement versus just buying the equipment straight out. So we're working on it. We don't have identified funding in this budget for it. And I think, again, what I started to say earlier, my sound went out in the other room, is that we're trying to continue to catch up on deferred maintenance, but unfortunately, the realistic picture is this year, some of the things on our wish list got pushed back. So, not that I'm saying that got pushed back, but I just think we don't have a readily available funding right this minute for that.
Okay. So anyway, there were 3 comments. I don't know how we read this into the record.
If I could, Michelle is actually here. So she came in right before this, or right at the after we did roll call. So I believe she's actually here to make a public comment. I know she sent one in, but she's here as well.
Okay. Well, whenever you think it appropriate, you go ahead and allow her to come up and say what's on her mind.
Yeah, I'm running between rooms. Let me see if I can. You want to go for it?
Yeah.
Okay, so Michelle's going to make, I think she's the only public comment. Go for it.
Okay. Good to see you all virtually. Hello. I actually kind of miss being in the council chambers a bit, but I thought this was an important enough conversation to at least participate in. I did send in comment by email earlier today, but I wasn't sure if you had a chance to read it. So I wanted to share my comments with you tonight. And just, listening to the conversation, I just want to kind of give my perspective about kind of seeing climate not as a wish list item, but as a necessity. I think we're talking about using Measure C funding for deferred maintenance. And my suggestion would be to continue deferring the deferred maintenance and prioritize climate because it's a necessity, not a wish. So just kind of coming on the heels of the conversation you were just having, and I'll just share with you what I wrote in. So regarding the city's budget for this next year, and actually realistically for every year for the foreseeable future, climate mitigation should be on the top of the list in terms of funding priorities. We know that climate change is an existential threat, and the longer we delay taking action, the worse off we'll be and the more lives that will be lost. It's going to cost us a lot more in the long run to deal with the catastrophic damages from climate change than to take the necessary preventative measures now. So while it sure would be nice to fund X, if the city could afford to do X, Y, and Z non-climate related projects, and I know a lot of those are in the budget right now, none of that will matter if we don't have a habitable planet. Let's first deal with the critically important issue of cutting our emissions, and then we can get around to the other stuff, which in all likelihood can wait. When considering the draft Measure C budget items, how about instead of just $76,000, we allocate $1 million for climate mitigation to convert this next year city facilities from natural gas to all electric appliances, install solar with battery backup on city facilities, convert city vehicles to electric, etc. This is the kind of leadership and commitment we need. Almost everything else should come secondary. The draft budget currently has, for example, $920,000 in street projects. Paving our streets could probably wait a year, unless of course it's allowing for more biking, which is zero emissions. Reducing our emissions cannot wait. The budget is a reflection of our priorities, so let's demonstrate that we are serious about doing our part to protect our collective future. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
I have a question of Michelle.
Yes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Did you just say that you sent us a letter today?
It was an email, and on the comment form, I sent it both ways.
Yeah,
I didn't get anything.
now, Louise sent it to you, and Gail may have.
It was in that.
Yeah, with the all the public comments that we got today, we got close to 40, I would say.
Okay.
Maybe it was buried. That's why I just want to make sure, that you've had a chance to hear my input.
So the other thing I want to say is I support what you just said 100%. Thank you.
Okay.
If I can add too, because we do take the climate mitigation seriously, and I want to point out that document that shows $76,000 of Measure C going to climate mitigation. What it doesn't say is that we have $800,000 in grants towards climate mitigation projects that we're doing this year, and to the point about the bike lanes, obviously the ATP is another multiple $1 million project that includes climate mitigation goals in it with the bike lanes. So I think we've categorized things a few different ways to illustrate different points. That document that shows the 76,000 for climate mitigation, that's not the complete list of climate mitigation. That's from one funding source.
Okay, we're back to Greg then.
Good.
We don't have anybody else there at council, do we?
Nobody else.
Okay, and we've identified, we did get, 2 letters, 2 emails in support of money for climate change, and we had a third one, from the museum?
Yeah, from the museum, supporting the museum's funding request of $60,000.
Okay, so where are we now on the capital project?
Okay, if you are so inclined, there's some basic IT equipment that we can review, and also the vehicle replacement. It's relatively brief. If you're ready to hit that, I'll do a share screen somewhere here. James, I think you'll need to allow me to share screen.
You're still sharing your screen.
Okay, it's still sharing. All right. So we've got here we are with fiscal year 2021, and we have a segment here shown as equipment and technology. So that fund starts off itself with 120. We have a lot of expenditures. We land up with 10,000. For vehicles and rolling stock, we start out with 223,000, and we then end with 165,000. And these two are combined into Fund 33, but we track them separately. So for under IT, you can see here that if you go to fund this fiscal year we're dealing with now, we've got 15,000 and 40,000 under network security. So I think we're aware of various organizations around town have been tagged and had malware and ransomware hit in their facilities. So this is a.
Greg, are you showing us something that we're not seeing?
Yeah, are you?
Did you scroll down or do something? But we can't. I have drainage total and transit fund 24 is what I'm looking at.
As am I.
Maybe give me a hint there, Mr. Hahn. What would be the trick to get my screen to show and share better? I guess he's on the way, so it'll take 1 second. Sorry about that. There's screen sharing. Where's my screen share go to?
Our paper. It's in there, isn't it?
Oh, right here. Yes.
Attachment B in the paper version.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Pick that one. All right. So, okay. Is that working better?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. And we'll have, okay, so, sorry, I'm having a little technical difficulty. I thought I had it going there. So, okay. So can you see that? Does it say Fund 33 up on that?
No, we've got general at the top, then hardware, network, server.
Terrific. Okay. All right. So what I was trying to say is that the network security audit, we have money allocated, let's see, for $15,000 and $40,000. And that is so we can have our system investigated with an audit and do the improvements to help assure we don't have a ransomware or malware attack, which seems to be more common. I think you might have just heard the city of Oxnard was even attacked, and they have a major protective system over there. So it seems to be just getting more and more difficult to protect the systems, and important that we step it up. So that does the initial assessment, some improvements, and then we're going to make that an annual thing from here on out. The hardware, we've got the Springbrook, which is our finance software server, is needed for replacement. I think this had excessive detail. The sheet that you're looking at has the recap for the total workstation repair. This is really just rebuilding workstation by workstation. In the view you have, it just shows the recap by department. So we're planning $7,000 to just upgrade computers and keep them operating at a reasonable speed and so on. We've got network infrastructure. We've got fire suppression planned for the server room over this upcoming year. I know we had a start on it this year, but we haven't incurred any expenses on it. We've had some pros looking at it. So that's
Greg, that's enough money to give you a new building?
Not a building. That's strictly for fire suppression around the server. I couldn't see the smile there, but yeah, right. Okay. Once we move Public Works out to Bryant Street, I think we've got some other plans.
You probably didn't spend that much on the building in the first place.
Yeah.
Let's not give anybody hints where that building is, just to help reduce any kind of potential damage to it. And then we've got further software. These are this part here goes along with Springbrook. Up above is the hardware. This is software to keep our Springbrook upgraded. That system's getting relatively old and needs an upgrade. Our PDF software is also not being supported anymore. We're not using the Adobe software. We're using something called Nuance, and that's just bought by another company, and you have to start going to these annual licenses and so on. We've got an under PEG channel, that separate funding source. That comes.
I'm sorry, can you back up on is it the Akili implementation? I guess that was for planning. We're not doing that now.
James, you probably have better update as city manager than I do on that.
Yeah, that was for the implementation of Excella. We've completed implementation, so that's complete.
Are we utilizing that system?
Yes.
Okay, and then down here in the, James Hahn is taking the lead on the AV recording system, doing a rebuild on that. It's had substantial upgrades over the past few years, but it'll have even further. We're going to start really trying to utilize that PEG money that's coming at us for what purposes we can. We also have AM radio station. The computer up there at that AM radio station was highlighted as part of the emergency council that the mayor's the head of. And that computer is out of date, needs a replacement, a full replacement with the software. That's about $9,000. I think beyond that, that's the primary expenses for IT and equipment. I can do vehicle replacement if you're ready for that. So we get to vehicle replacement here, relatively minor. We're trying to keep it tight this year related to the revenue reductions related to COVID. We do have an old bucket truck. It's got some issues with the hydraulics, and we have a separate truck whenever we do chip our wood or do any of our own pruning, which we're doing more of now too, as part of some cost saving measures. We're looking at replacing the old bucket truck and the old chipper truck with a combo truck. You see a lot of these bigger companies like Asplund and West Coast. They sell their equipment when it's a few years old. It's perfect used equipment that we would use much less rigorously. It wouldn't be daily, it'd be periodic. And we can have a high reach bucket as well as a chipper container right in the back, so we can do it all in one package instead of two separate trucks.
Mayor and Greg, I guess my question here is, we let a contract out for tree maintenance in the city. Why would we be investing in tree equipment ourselves if we have a contract to perform this service? And it seems to me every time I see a truck go out to prune a tree, there's usually 4 or 5 bodies with it. So that's 4 or 5 bodies that aren't doing regular maintenance for the city. I have a hard time justifying that when we have a contract for tree repair and tree services. I'm lost on why we're doing this.
I guess it's a 2-step. One is that the truck bucket itself is needed for things when we do light replacements and do other work, like up in when we get into areas, even tennis lights and so on, any kind of high reach lights, we need a high reach bucket. And that one is really old. It's an old diesel, really out of date truck. We need to bring it up to something more recent than past decade. And so it's needed for that purpose. And we can buy a combo truck because it is expensive under the contract to do that work. So if we've got simple work we can do, or sometimes we need to put an arborist in that bucket to go up and look at them to make the recommendations for the tree contractor. So I think somewhere between saving money and other uses, it'd be good to get rid of that old bucket truck and the old chipper truck and get one combination truck.
So I just heard you correctly. We're putting a arborist who's not a city employee into a bucket truck that we own and taking him up in the air?
Yes, they have to generally get up to do closer inspections on any kind of concerns we have. And so they have insurance. They cover themselves. They provide that as part of the agreement with them. And we make sure that we are protected from that, but it is the best way to get the inspection and without renting a separate inspection bucket truck. Secondly, we have this old trailer, which doesn't quite hold things that we'd like to move around, like our Bobcat and so on. So we were just talking about buying a used, little bit bigger trailer that can haul around the Bobcat. And we do use it sometimes to haul things like K-rail and some other special equipment. This is the one that Councilman Haney was asking about. Can we slurry our own parking lots? We had it in the budget before. We were trying to find used ones, but we're not able to find used. We've been looking high and low for a used trailer. And if they are available, they're way the heck out of the area and they're beat to the bone. I think they're really popular for anybody in town to buy one or get a hand-me-down to start your own slurry business for the driveways and so on. So I think that's the primary expenses under vehicles. We were looking at surplus in the trolley, which is it's pretty small money, that older trolley. It would depend on where that fare box recovery ratio looks like. They're going to give us a freebie this year related to CARES Act, or the COVID fare box reductions we're seeing, and it will probably bleed into next year. So we might even roll that forward another year. But anyway, it's pretty straightforward vehicle replacement. Most of it was pushed forward to conserve cash. So if there's no other questions on that, I guess that pretty much covers the CIP, vehicle replacement, and equipment, IT equipment.
And James, do you have anything else? If not, should we move to the next item?
Yeah, nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go to item number 3, the coronavirus discussion.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Thanks. And we have just a brief update on coronavirus, and then there's a couple of things we can talk about, I think, that we'll want to talk about. We had put some updated numbers out, but again, the county released some additional information just as this council meeting was starting. So this is already outdated. They announced 105 new cases.
Get rid of the slide. Oh,
Yeah. They had announced 105 new cases over the weekend, putting the total at 1,017 now. So you'll see an increase from what was shown here prior to that. They have said that there are 27 hospitalized, 13 in the ICU, and there have now been 32 deaths, and they are up to 22,000 and about 22,600 tested. The county has continued to put a focus on increasing the number of people tested, and the numbers have been increasing in recent days, so that's a positive. And it also allowed the county, that was one of the critical items that allowed the county to move forward with this accelerated phase 2. And so speaking of that, give me 1 second here. As most people have heard, but some people, I know it's happening quickly, so some people haven't. So we wanted to just kind of restate that the Ventura County Public Health Office put out a new order on May 20th, and they've already done an amendment now here as well. But the order was intended to allow retail businesses to reopen with certain protocols depending on the industry. And the big one here in Ojai was that dine-in restaurants could reopen with reduced capacity. And as we discussed earlier, they were required to go on vcreopens.com and attest that they are following certain protocols. It also allowed retail stores to reopen with the same requirements. And so that was the big change last week. But as Councilmember Blatz mentioned, about 6:30 today, the county announced that they are moving forward with opening up hair salons and barber shops as well. They've already had 40 businesses register as of 8 p.m., which is a little bit ago. There are going to be some requirements, like their barbershops and hair salons are going to be required to wear face coverings and aren't going to be able to do anything like facials or anything where they touch people's faces. So as we are seeing with all of these things, they're happening very quickly. We have been meeting in our recovery task force that includes Councilmember Haney and Councilmember Wyrick, Jamie Fleming from the Chamber of Commerce, and Dr. Halverson. And we've been working on protocols that we can try to respond very quickly and make sure that we're comfortable with things here in Ojai. And that kind of speaks to this last point here, which is that we keep reminding people, a lot of people have asked if we could open things before the county does. We can be more strict, but we can't be less strict. So in Ojai, we're one of the cities that has actually chosen to be a little more strict, a little more careful by having our face covering order, which remains in place, and by providing signage with and key protocols to cities. And then we also, people have heard that Ventura is going to look at allowing expanded businesses on Main Street. We've done the same thing here, or a very similar thing in Ojai, allowing businesses to expand their outdoor capacity as well, although we haven't done a street closure yet, and that's something that we can talk about under this item. the way we've done it to get started, as a few businesses have opened up, is we've started to do a no-cost review and permit from the city that allows them to add seating outdoors. And as of 6 o'clock today, we had 4 businesses that had taken advantage of that. Bonnie Lou's, Nachiola, and there were 2 other, Casa del Lago, and I'm blanking on the 4th, but we've had 4 businesses that have taken advantage. We had a couple businesses who've reopened their patios and then have told us they might come back and see about expanding if things develop in that way for them. So we're taking action, trying to make sure that we can have people spaced, that we can have face coverings, and everything can operate safely while allowing the businesses to get back and bringing our economy back. And again, things are moving very quickly. So earlier today, when we were putting this together, we were highlighting that we are on stage 2, and we were noting that some things like limited hospitality and personal services were expected to open soon. Governor Newsom did today say that we're moving very quickly towards stage 3, and we're not exactly sure how quickly that is yet, but he mentioned religious services, that they're going to be able to open with specific requirements as well now, which is the start of phase 3. So things are moving very quickly. I don't have much else on the slides. One thing we wanted to just provide testing information is they continue to roll out more testing options and open that up to people who have are in close contact with someone or who has symptoms. And as far as next steps, things we're immediately working on, I think everybody sees this. There's a back order of hand sanitizer stations and hand sanitizer syrup. We had actually ordered 5 weeks ago, thinking that we would be way ahead of this thing. We're expected to get the stations on June 6th. So this weekend we won't have them, but by next weekend we're hoping to, and we're going to try to install them as quick as we can after that. So we're going to be installing some touchless hand sanitizer stations. We still have the hand washing stations, and we're still increasing bathroom maintenance and trash pickup. We did all that this weekend. We'll still be doing that in the next couple of weeks. We're continuing to work with outdoor dining, our businesses regarding outdoor dining. We've talked about potentially closing either one of a couple of streets, either Matilaha or Ojai Avenue, for either an event or for outdoor dining. One thing we did notice this weekend, both Jamie Fleming and I were going to restaurants to talk to them, is that we noticed that a lot of restaurants aren't open yet, and they're talking about opening, but they're having some challenges getting their staff back and some other things. So when Jamie and I talked about it, we were realizing if we had tried to close one of the streets this weekend, it would have been for maybe 1 or 2 restaurants total. So I think from our perspective, we're kind of seeing how many people are opening and how many people are interested in this before we really try to, move that forward. But it's something we can talk about here tonight if council desires to. Also, as we mentioned, tennis courts are open for single play, not doubles. Pickleball is open for single play, not doubles, but it's limited hours, which we ended up getting several comments from members of the public. I think it was 16 comments total, encouraging to expand those hours. I think what I'm hearing a lot is that right now we have limited hours from 4 to 6 p.m. in the evening. With the heat, people are asking if we could expand that a little bit later into the evening, another hour or so. And so that's something we had talked at the council level about limiting the hours. So I think if we're going to open it up more, it's something we should talk about at this point. And then the next item on the agenda, but I'll just address it briefly here, is that the 4th of July parade and concert have been canceled. But the next item on the agenda will discuss the fireworks show. And then as we mentioned, this has all happened just in the time we were here, but the state announced the barbershops, hair salons, and places of worship could begin reopening with certain protocols in place. So with that, that's kind of the latest update on coronavirus. And I'll take any questions or we can talk about some of these issues.
Susan?
I have a question. Can you confirm that all 32 deaths have been comorbidity? Was the first 30 were? Has anything changed on that?
I believe that is accurate. I'm trying to look at my most recent email. I don't know about the 2 that have been added because we just found out about those at 7 o'clock today. So 7 p.m. So I don't have any information on those last 2.
Okay, so I just think it's very critical that the public understands that every death so far has had underlying health issues, which doesn't mean that we shouldn't be careful, but it's important so that there's the fear factor is really sometimes irrational.
Right, the little fear maybe keeps people on their toes too, though. And I see a lot of people who aren't frightened by it at all wandering around town.
Yes, so that's one point. But the other point is that we need to emphasize that a healthy immune system is still your best protection, more important than masks, sanitizing, washing your hands, and all that. That is the only thing that will ultimately protect you is a healthy immune system. I'm not convinced that the signs, I'm fine with people choosing to wear masks, but I want to go on record as there's just so much evidence that the masks themselves have health issues. You cannot breathe as freely. And I know there's many doctors on both sides of the aisle as far as making masks mandatory and having masks be a common sense decision. If only we could count on people to use their common sense, which obviously when we see the news, people seem to be one extreme to the other. But what I'm getting at is that it just feels to me that we're at a point where we should look at making masks mandatory. I don't know if the rest of the council has already made a decision. We have received at least one email listing the reasons why some doctors don't feel that the science is there to make masks mandatory. Obviously, if you're ill, you shouldn't go out in public. And if you're in a crowded condition, it seems to me a mask makes sense. But I see so much confusion in the public. I cannot tell when people are walking around and I've seen kids in the park on scooters wearing masks. And that's a sad state of affairs when 7-year-old kids or younger are wearing masks.
Why is that sad? Other than sad for the rest of civilization.
To me, it's unhealthy for children who are, the investigation I've done shows me that overuse of masks for healthy people, most especially children, they keep pulling them down. I cannot breathe as freely in a mask. And they're saying that people...
Well, you have some kind of motion you want to make, or I understand your concern.
No, I'm not making a motion. I want to know if there's any support for even discussing it.
Yeah, I will say this. Since April 3rd, the Center for Disease Controls has recommended using a cloth face covering in public as a health and safety encouragement. That's been since April 3rd.
Yes.
I just want to bring that up. That's the Center for Disease Control. So I'm not really sure where the science is. We've had it in place. We haven't. I'm not sure where the science is really conflicted in this.
I figure you felt that way. Yeah.
Hey, Bill?
Yeah. Susan, I think we've struck an excellent balance in the community where we're not. I think it is not valid or not. It doesn't have merit to say that every time you walk out of the house you should have a face covering. Like if you're walking a trail or something outside, and we don't say that, and we don't say that kids should have to have a face covering while they're on a scooter. That's not what our rule is in the city of Ojai. It is simply that when you're going in and having interactions with other people that you don't know, in a store or in in some sort of situation like that you should have a face covering almost as just a courtesy to others. So it's not an all the time thing. I think we've hit the right balance on it. And the other thing I get an overwhelming sense of from the business community is they really want that. You talk about the comfort factor. Businesses want that face covering inside their businesses, and they really appreciate that we have a clear guideline by the city that they can point to help them with that standard. A lot of especially retailers outside the county are having trouble because people say, well, the county, you don't have, there's no rule that says they want to have that rule in their business as part of their protocol, as part of their management of their environment. And if they don't have the backup from the city in that limited situation, they're not on as solid ground. So I feel that our businesses really appreciate the I think well-balanced view that we've taken on this.
I agree with you, Bill. Okay, is there any other comment? If not,
Mayor, I'll close with this. I said it earlier about what our first responders are doing for us as a community and as a country, and that we have a responsibility to them, and that what we're doing is very, very responsible and very accountable. And also, all the businesses that I go into, they appreciate the fact that there's something on the books that they can point to and say, this is how we're conducting business in our community. And they're masked up. They expect the people or individuals or the customer coming in to wear one. In fact, I was in Ojai Lumber today. I walked in without mine and they asked me to go get one on. So as a community, we're 100% behind this. And while I respect Susan's opinion, because there is some validity to it, I think as a whole, we're exactly where we're supposed to be. And as this moves forward, I think that this council and this community will know what steps to take and when to take those steps to lessen this. So I think we're at the right place at the right time, doing the right thing.
Okay, thank you, Randy. James, what else do we have on this item? Anything?
No, those were the main points. So there were a couple of potential discussion items, but if
Mayor and Council, before you move forward, you do have to consider the items that were under consent for item 1J,
right,
namely resolution confirming the emergency declaration and a resolution confirming the 2 executive orders issued since the last time.
Okay.
I have one more comment, Mayor. I'm sorry. I was stuck on this mask thing, but we did receive quite a few comments from the pickleball community. And I'd like to be able to have James get back to us as to when we can increase the courts from 2 to 4, still keep the pickleball activity from its singles rather than doubles. And there's no reason to have a midday closure when it's 85 or 90 degrees. I'd like to see us open it from 8:30 in the evening or 8:30 in the morning till 7:30 in the evening. I would say we should just duplicate our park hours, but I understand there's some other circumstances here. But I'd like to see us open that up, just like the rest of the parks and just like all the tennis courts that we offer.
Okay, thanks, Randy. Do we have a motion to approve J?
I don't understand how that comment fit in with what we're discussing right now. Where did that come from? Randy's comment.
Is that a problem? Come on, let's just move along here. All we need is a motion on.
I would like I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution confirming the continued existence of a local emergency and adopt resolutions executive order 20-03 and 20-04.
And I'll second it.
Okay, moved and seconded.
And the one minor change there that was noted earlier is if the request for council is also to approve executive order 20-05.
And I'll amend my motion as 20-05.
And Matt, that is subject to any changes we might make under this agenda item, but we need to pass that first. Is that what I'm understanding?
Correct. If you want to make changes, you may do so now. But the request,
but yeah, let's pass J and then finalize 3.
Okay. That's the recommendation.
Okay, is there any further discussion on J? If not, is there any objection? Hearing none, so ordered. Okay, where are we now? We're on item 3. Did you say?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, if nobody else.
Yeah, Ryan. What is it?
Well, one thing on 3 is we have and thank you to everybody who was involved in the the 10 commandments that were written, came down from the mountaintop on how you open a restaurant in Ojai. By the way, side point, just always make it 9 or 11. You're not Moses, but that's not, I'll leave that later. When there were a few things that were a little rigid that were communicated to me since that came out at the end of last week to now. I don't know what our flexibility is. I suggest everyone contact the city. If it's how it's written, there may be flexibility, there may not be. I know that the open door, where you have to either crack the door open or have a way that people aren't touching it every time. I know specifically for Bonnie Lou's, that was a tough issue because they have a problem with it being so hot on the weekend and their air conditioner and it being open. I just wanted to suggest that on any of those rules, if there was a functional approved workaround that we allowed businesses to know that might work. For example, I have no idea exactly what's going on at Bonnie Lou's, but if they said, hey, us leaving the door open makes it really hot, it doesn't work. If they had a way that you didn't, that you were disposable touching the door, I would assume it would achieve the same goal. And I'm not going to say that it's my decision whether that's too rigid or not, but I would hope that we were letting our local merchants know that if there is some flexibility, that they are aware of that. Because it did get brought up to me that we can't even operate under these rules. And I said, well, at least go ask. Let's see what we can do. So I don't know if that's come up, but I would also assume that without any specific vote from the council, that the staff, specifically you, James, could unilaterally decide where there might be some flexibility. In other words, a variance, if you will, on a certain order, but not too far. But if it still worked, that might be available. I don't know what else to say other than just, all right, I've confirmed with you that that's out there. The other thing was when you, James, I don't remember when it was you were talking, but you made it sound like there was a separate registration that you were going to have to do with the city. And there was something you were talking about in some context where it wasn't just the county thing, but you'd have to register with the city. But I'm not aware that you have to actually do a registration with the city. You still have to comply with our rules. But is there a separate, if you do the county website and you check all those boxes, is there anything else locally that you technically have to do?
So if they have to test on VC reopens with the county. What we've been asking is if they can just self-certify on the 10 protocols, that document that we're giving them, and that way, if we happen to go out and either just check in, which we have been doing, or if we get calls about issues, we go out. We can just ask them for their self-certification and see that they've checked it off. But we're not asking them to certify on any website or send it in or wait for an approval. We're just
so the right response, without putting words in your mouth, is they're responsible for those 10 protocols, but they don't have to do anything to tell us. But they need to be responsible if someone comes out. They need to be responsible. And I did see a county truck, by the way, on Friday last week riding around town. I have no idea. I didn't hear. Nobody stopped by my office. I don't know who's been, but there was, interestingly, a county individual in a county truck driving around. So nothing else specific they have to do, but obviously they're responsible for our local rules. And if there's any of them that don't fit right, well, they should contact the city before they move forward if it's not quite, if they're not complying expressly with those rules.
Right.
And the county's made a big deal about roaming around, checking people's plans that they found.
Yeah, that's what. Bill. I that's why I think the truck was roaming around Ojai the other day, but I'm not sure. But like many inspection things with the county, as is the probation department, we tend to be last because it's a little further to drive. Now, as far as, because we talk about Ojai Avenue, is there any update on? Have we found anything out from Caltrans, or if we do, if we get people? We every 2 weeks, like I said last week, right? 2 weeks seems like not a long time, but on our Corona timeline, it's the world changes every 3 days. So between now and whenever we have to talk again as a council, is there anything we need to authorize you to do or look at as far as just, is it kind of like we're giving you the ability to make a decision, or the ad hoc committee to make a decision as things, if it's available on Ojai Avenue, if that's the right thing to do moving forward?
So what we have done to this point was so that we have options. We've applied. It's a no-cost permit. It's a couple hours of staff time. So we had someone from Public Works submit an application at no cost. So we've applied. We're hearing that Caltrans is open to working with cities, that they're supporting their requests. So we have a feeling that they'll actually be somewhat positive about it. But again, we did that so that we had the option, because we know, there's concerns about closing Ojai Avenue too that we've heard. So we wanted, if we want to either close Ojai Avenue or Matilaha, and if that need arises, we wanted to be able and be ready to do so. But again, the big surprise for both Jamie and I this week was we walked through town and again, because it was...
They weren't ready to go, or they just didn't know what they wanted to do?
It was very short notice, but restaurants were saying, we're not even ready to open yet.
Yeah. That was a feeling I got from who I talked to over the weekend too. A few places jumped out and seemed like they were ready. I know Casa de Lago, a few others were chomping at the bit. A few others just said, hey, we're, and frankly, the county didn't give anybody a firm notice. Even I know Soul Park had to, it was confusing for them, because there was one order that said you can't open a restaurant as a golf course, but then they said go for a golf restaurant. So I guess my question is that what do we do now? So until we are all meeting again at our next council meeting, we've given you whatever appropriate discretionary authority, if any, to do that. Because, right, I mean, I don't know. I think we have there's probably a debate to be had about how we're handling Ojai Avenue, or are we just saying, hey, James, you make a decision on your own, which I'm not necessarily that's not necessarily the wrong. I'm not necessarily against that either, but I guess that's my question.
Yeah, nice.
So, Mayor?
Yeah.
Just to quickly touch on this, to help Ryan to understand, I think, where the business community is. One, there's not enough open, but two, they're not even asking for it. They're not even asking for Matilaha to be closed. In fact, most of the businesses that align themselves on Matilaha think it might be detrimental. So to a few people in the community, it sounds like a good thing because someone else is doing it. But to our business-based community, they're not inclined right now. They don't see the need. And this isn't coming from Bill and I. We listen. This is coming from James, Jamie, and Jim.
Yeah.
Wait, the 3 J's or the 3 Musketeers?
That's the same feedback I'm getting, Randy.
Yep.
But
Yeah. Is it?
I thought the point was that we wanted to encourage outdoor dining, because if we're so concerned about this virus, people sitting in an air-conditioned room with the door, and now we're hearing from Ryan that they're worried about propping the door open a little bit. It seems like the purpose was to encourage outdoor dining versus indoor dining. As far as Matilaha goes, all Bill and I had in mind was an experiment during, as Bill's raising his hand so he'll weigh in, especially during farmers market hours, so that the people waiting in line are not so crowded on the sidewalk. And there's, that whole stretch just past the Lavender Inn, so there's no, to the farmers market. It seems to me that we could do something. At least Jamie suggested removing the parking on one side. Even that would help on the side where people are waiting to use farmers market. But I want to hear what Bill has to say.
Mayor, is that all right? And Susan, my thinking hasn't changed that this is maybe something to look at, but what Randy and I are saying, what we're hearing from the community is that right now the demand for the outdoor dining is not a problem. The space, in other words, the demand is so low that the space, there's no space problem with the outdoor dining right now. Now that may change really quickly, and I think we need to be ready to move. But my point is, I want to support our local business community first and foremost right now as they try to reopen. And I still want to do what we've been talking about, but do it in a way that supports the business community. And right now, the business community is just trying to get staff to do minimal effort with the available supply of outdoor space, which exceeds the demand. And as that gets more into balance, then I think we need to, revisit this. But right now, the business community is pretty clear. that they want to wait before we do something like that.
Is that because, Mayor, may I ask Bill a question? Is that because people prefer to go inside or the demand is not?
No, it's just that we have excess supply of outdoor space right now. The demand for outdoor space is being met by anybody that wants it pretty much right now.
Right. I wanted to, I agree, Bill, and Mayor, I just wanted to touch on, Ryan, the most interesting things about the hands and doors is, as all of us know, to go into an establishment, you've got to put your hand on something. And most of us aren't carrying anything or gloved up to prevent us from catching anything. And so it's always interesting to me when I hear that. I know Bonnie Lou's is probably because of the age of their building, in pretty bad shape when it comes to opening doors and closing doors. And as we heat up, it's going to get worse for them. I get that. So I agree with you. You know, if James can work with any of these businesses to help facilitate their ability to come out of this on the good side, then we should be doing that. But not having open doors, because I open a lot of doors during the day. I'd love it if someone could figure out how I didn't have to put my hand on a door.
I use my butt sometimes.
It's funny, you watch people try and use their foot or their elbow to hit the crosswalk button on street corners. It's funnier than heck.
Okay, Ryan, do you have a motion?
Ryan, I see your hand up.
I'm trying to get back in here. Look, I understand, and I've talked to a whole bunch of business owners, especially the restaurants in town. I reached out to a whole bunch this last week and heard from all kinds of people who said they knew all the opinions of everybody. A little bit of hearsay, but I did talk to a lot directly. What I could tell was they didn't have a clue what was going on. Everybody was kind of sideswiped by the county opening up this quickly. I didn't get the sense from any restaurateur that they had a clear understanding that dine-in restaurants were going to be open in Ventura County when they were. So I think patrons as well, demand, I just don't think demand was a real accurate depiction over this last weekend. It's so soon, right? We're talking about Friday and it's Tuesday.
Right.
Since then. So I think that the demand was hard to kind of figure out. That being said, I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know, but I know this much. My guess is that between now and our next council meeting, more is going to happen than we're going to understand tonight. And it's about authorizing James to do what may be or may not be available then.
Well,
I understand that nobody
can do that. So,
well, I mean, I don't think anybody wanted to open Ojai Avenue this weekend. I think that's a no-brainer. I don't think anybody was ready. I don't think it would have done any good. But I do think that it's worth considering over the next 2 weeks, or maybe we say, no, you can't do it. But I have another opinion about it too, which is these are just like at Air Pollution Control District, we look at this as a giant human experiment in a way that we don't get to ever see what happens again. And darn it if I don't think it's worth experimenting with Ojai Avenue as being as quaint and as picturesque and as unique as it could be to help a couple restaurants maybe, be able to catch up or at least get back open a week sooner or whatever it might be. And us at least be able to see. We know what traffic looks like routed around it. We've seen it at the 4th of July, Ojai Day, multiple different events. I don't think it's a huge problem. I think if we did it right, we could only see benefit. Now, if there's restaurants that don't want to do it, obviously there's no requirement to do it. If it doesn't work for you, you don't have to do it. But man, I would hate to be the one city, especially if we see a picture of Ventura next week as this cool kind of quaint downtown area doing it and we're not. I mean, if I'm not hearing logistically or government-wise, it's totally out of control to do it. Obviously, if there's not enough demand, it may be that there's not enough demand versus the benefit we get. But I would hate to see us take it off the table in a town like ours. I know that our, Ojai Avenue is a highway rather than a surface street. But I went back to Matilaha over the weekend and analyzed all of it. I mean, if you're at OMG, it's so much further to Matilaha than it is to Ojai Avenue. I don't know if you could do anything anyway. But I would sure it would sure be attractive. And if we're trying to attract people, maybe we're not trying to do that, but if we're trying to get people to the restaurants for whatever capacity they have, Ojai Avenue gives them the most capacity and the most attraction. It seems like that would be the benefit to our community the most. I'd like to leave the door open.
But
It may not be this week, but maybe in a couple of weeks, James may have a different.
Who's going to
Mayor and council.
Who's going to take the lead on traffic control? Because when you close off a state highway, you still have problems. The city of Santa Monica had problems closing off 3rd Street when somebody ran the barricades and took a bunch of people out in a car. So if there isn't a huge demand for it, and even if there is a modest demand, how is this going to be done?
Well, there was no demand for the baseball field until he said, build it and they will come.
Mayor,
I don't know what the demand is. But that being said, I mean, we haven't had any, we haven't had that situation ever happen on Ojai Day or on 4th of July or other similar events. I mean, I'm not the safety. I'm not the last stand for safety, but I know we've put the 2 trolleys across Ojai Avenue. Nobody's getting through there.
Say something.
Bill.
City attorney is trying to say something.
Thank you. 2 quick points on the legal side. Number 1, the city manager has the sufficient authority to close any street in the city under the emergency declarations that is controlled by the city. As to Ojai Avenue or Maricopa Highway, two approvals are needed. 1 is Caltrans, 2 is the city manager. Your existing emergency declaration gives him the authority to close it should he deem it necessary, and then Caltrans approval will be required as well. As to the wisdom of that is up to you guys. If you wish to cabin his authority between now and the next council meeting, you may do so. Else, it is up to his discretion as he sees fit as necessary to respond to the pandemic.
Thanks, Matt.
Mayor?
Yes, Randy.
Again, I don't think anyone has said no. I just think everyone has said no one's asking for it. And then I think there's plenty of time for it to come back to council. I don't think James is going to make that decision without coming back to council. So we have plenty of time to think about that. But again, you just look at all the alternatives. There is logistics that you have to take into consideration. There is traffic control that you have to take into consideration. And there is the fact that, yeah, we may be helping a few people downtown, but we may be adversely affecting our community. Ojai Day, things of that nature are one day and there's a certain amount of time. I don't even know, Ryan, if you're talking about shutting it down every day, shutting it down for a month, shutting it down. So until we have that discussion about the durations and things of that nature, we can't really even contemplate this.
Well, I agree, but we're here to have that discussion. I mean, that's
well,
what
not really tonight. That's not what we're here to do tonight.
Well,
I think you want to have the 2 of you that are interested sit down and see if you can make a proposal, and then we put a price tag on it.
And I disagree about there being no demand. I've had probably 24 people in the community contact me. Now I have to say they're not restaurant owners, who I don't know where. The restaurant owners I talk to have a lot of other concerns, but I've had at least 24 people in the community ask me that we should do this. And I think anybody who's on Facebook can see that from the responses to Ventura and other places, tons of people forwarding those messages to us saying, why isn't Ojai doing the same thing that Ventura and these other cities are doing?
I sure wish we could import Ventura's weather.
Okay. Mayor, may I
Right,
speak?
and their traffic pattern. They've got lots of side streets. Yes, Susan.
So let's not forget what drove this idea to make pedestrian zones. It was so that people could social distance and be further apart. Right now, people are walking to farmers market, are crowded on a sidewalk on Matilaha that has barely enough room for 1 person. They can't even walk side to side, let alone they have to,
Right, we know that. Okay, well.
So in Matilaha Street, sooner or later, I do want to keep the door open. I support what Ryan has said. The community would love to see a pedestrian zone. There's something that it's so human. People.
Okay, that would be great. That's not on the agenda right now, though. I understand what you're saying. I mean, that's why we have the plot.
Originally, it was Bill and I talked about it because it would make more space for people to walk to farmers market and
Okay, I need a motion of some sort because we're going to be here all night and get nowhere. What is the motion, or is there a motion?
I don't know if we need a motion. James has got the discretionary authority. He's very good at listening to us. We're all gathering information. And Susan, I'm not closing the door. I'm just trying to be sensitive and balanced here, with a primary being support our local businesses right now.
Okay, James, what do you need? Anything more on this item?
No.
No, I don't think so. I think I agree with Councilmember Blatz's point that everything changes very quickly. So a week from now, it may have changed, but we will continue to get proceed with getting permits and everything else, so we can have that.
I'm just saying, if by Friday 3 businesses request to do Ojai Avenue, I don't know what position we're putting James in at that point. I don't know.
Talk to all of us.
That would be a Brown Act violation. So
no, not to talk to James. We can all talk to him as much as we want.
Okay, well, James says he doesn't need anything more tonight, so let's go to item number 4.
I want to say one more thing. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. We were going to the next thing. We've had plenty of conversation on this. Item number 4 is, James.
4th of July parade and fireworks show. We talked about this at the last meeting. It was triggered by the chair discussion, which we had. And the 4th of July parade, or 4th of July committee, has notified us that the parade has been canceled. They also submitted that public comment today confirming that. So really the only outstanding question at this point is whether the fireworks show can proceed. The committee today submitted a request to the city saying that they have not been able to really fundraise or anything this year. And so essentially they were asking the city to pay for the fireworks show, which was not budgeted. Originally this item was on just to discuss whether we would issue a permit and under what conditions with addressing some of the concerns. Now there's some additional question here about the costs of the event as well.
We haven't had any chance to fundraise it either. All our revenues are going down, so I would say that that's a non-starter.
I would second.
Anything more on it?
I think that.
I have to say, I think Randy, Johnny, I think we all know we're not about to add a budget line item for a recreational event, unfortunately, and the circumstances we're under. And not that we wouldn't love to consider it or try and save something if we could, but I think if in 6 months from now there's a re-outbreak or we're in a financial budget situation, the last $20,000 or $40,000 we have is a lot of money that makes a difference. There's no way we can spend it.
We can't commit to this.
I also think that
I do. I want to say too, I know Bill brought up a point, and I feel this too. There's no more appropriate time in Ojai's history to have a reasonable celebration for everybody. Unfortunately, the finances of this are not reasonable.
We're going to have some other creative way of doing it.
Yeah.
I think there's something else too. The fact they don't even have school board approval yet either.
A good point.
I mean, this has been in limbo, and it's just one of those things. I mean, we canceled the Ojai tennis tournament, the oldest running tournament in the United States. So it's just things happen. You have to
and the state has said anything like this is stage 4, and we're just getting into the first part of stage 3 right now.
No, I mean, and if you saw the 4th of July committee, and I love them to death, there's a whole nother gap of funding if we don't have people rear ends in the seats in the stadium, and that's not realistic in any sense. Even though they said it could be socially distanced, there is not one single large group in stands okayed at this point or foreseeable between now and the 4th of July. It's just
you get all the imported people.
It's a tough one, but
that's even a bigger problem. Yeah.
So do we need a motion on this, Mayor?
No, I don't. Unless somebody wants to move to approve it, but I don't see how we can.
Okay.
So it's not.
The one thing, if I can add too, is I did mean to add that every other agency we contacted in Ventura County has canceled theirs, except for Conejo, and they are likely going to cancel theirs.
So Santa Paula is not going ahead.
I believe Santa Paula was on the list of cancellations. Yeah.
Okay, they canceled. Yeah, we can't be the only game in town. That was
No, we're going to find a creative way as a community to celebrate the 4th of July. We got plenty of time.
we need
Now
to
that we
think
know there's
something.
not going to be a parade and fireworks, we're all going to work together to do
I
something.
agree.
We're starting with the banners on Ojai Avenue, which
Mm-hmm.
may not be 4th of July related, but is seasonal to what we're looking at. And rest assured, the creativity of this community will figure something really cool
I'm
and
confident that we will.
It just give us a minute now that we know what we can't do, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And let's hope in 3 weeks when the reopening has had a chance to show what it's doing, that it's all positive, in which case we can revisit. Okay, adoption of resolution amending the ballot label for proposed cannabis general tax.
Yeah, and just briefly, almost a year ago, June 11th, 2019, the city council adopted a resolution calling the election and submitting a proposed general business license tax of cannabis businesses. The city council directed the cannabis subcommittee to further evaluate the language of the ballot label. That was done. It's been done for a while. We were trying to hold the item, the revised language, which is in the packet. We tried to hold it until public meetings could be held again. So we were holding it throughout this pandemic. And that was why, again, today we opened up City Hall as well to try to let the public participate. We have no one here to speak on it, but we did get one public comment on it submitted by, I believe it was Chelsea Satula. The language proposed has 47 words and is on page 5-3 of the packet, and it's been revised. So with that, I'll turn it over to you for discussion.
I have a question there.
Yeah, Bill.
Does the language as amended, the 47 words, first question, does it allow a differential percentage by cannabis business type? For example, retail to be different than manufacturing and distribution?
Yes, the proposed language sets an upper bound of 10% for all business types. The council can adopt by resolution lower standards as done here with the proposed 3%, and can adopt differential standards or differential tax rates by business type, retail versus manufacturing versus micro businesses, et cetera.
So the bound would be a minimum of 3% on everything and then choice to go up to 10.
Slight difference. The bound is a max of 10. The current 3% is what the council adopted last summer as the initial tax rate.
Could be
But
anything above 0
No,
or 0.
0 to 10 is the bound.
The minimum would be 3 if this passed.
The minimum that the council could set it at would be 0 to 10%. The 3% reflects what the council adopted last summer as the initial rates.
I see. So it could go, if we wanted to put retail down to 0 theoretically and 10% on manufacturing, that's within the council's discretion if this passes.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Bill, I know when we discussed it, we wanted to make sure that we decoupled the different types of micro business sections as separate. And we also said too, if we decided to say, oh, rather than tax like a micro business with all 3 elements separately, we could do that together too. We can essentially modify it however we want, but the language of it does indicate and will start at 3 up to 10. But we could always, as a council, if it passed, amend it down hypothetically to 0 if we wanted right afterward, or 1 or whatever else.
The ballot label does not preclude going down if we wanted to.
No, but it does talk about the 3% specific. I know we made sure the language in it, so we didn't make it like, oh, it's up to 10 without telling people what it was.
Okay.
If we wanted to amend what it said as far as the 3, tonight would be the last chance I think we'd have to do that.
Well, Mayor, I had one question. I think I was the only one the last time that wanted a higher fee. And the reason behind that was to change the 10% to anything greater is going to take another ballot initiative. So my question to the rest of the council members is, we have this opportunity at this point in time. do we want to increase it to 15% or greater, knowing that we have all of the ability to go from 0 to that number? That's what I asked for before. I don't think I said it as clearly. So again, instead of 10%, we go to 15%, recognizing that we have the ability to drop any of these taxes from 0 up to. So just a thought.
Okay,
Well, I
entertain a
will say
motion.
this. I will say this, Randy, and after being deep diving into all of this and understanding even more and more, and with what was some anticipatory hope that by now, when it came to May of 2020, we'd see some regulatory differences and some cleanup of this on the state and otherwise level. It is a mess. We are seeing more and more pressure on these businesses. The ones that are successful are actually few and far between, yet our neighbors, non-direct in Port Hueneme, are very successful, but that is very much a high demand, high population area with no supply. They're the few local places that can do it. We've seen a benefit here, but there is no question moving forward, the taxes that are currently imposed on cannabis businesses, independent of any local taxes, are still so significantly onerous and difficult on these purveyors, in addition to their tax write-off capabilities. And in addition to that, their inabilities to be able to work with normal banks. It's just so hard to do this business that in good faith, I can't imagine any reasonable time in the future where we'd go above 10. And I don't think it would be reasonable at this point to go above 3. To go up to 10 would be a significant departure. Now, I don't necessarily disagree that one day we may want that access to do it, but I mean, if you look at what fundamentally is going on, and now we know more and more after the data on these businesses.
Okay, Ryan, would you make a motion for us?
Well, my motion would be to accept what we had, but Randy wanted to amend it to being a more substantial than 10%. My motion,
but he did not have a second. You're not seconding it, are you?
No.
Okay. Does anybody want to second that?
But my motion would be to approve it as written.
I'll second Ryan.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Now let's conduct the debate. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, John.
Oh, can I say something?
Yeah.
I want to support what Ryan said. I was going to say some of what he brought up. They still don't have access to the banking system. They have all kinds of hardships with financial institutions. And the public knows that whatever tax is imposed, they're going to pay for it. So if we make it too high, the public, it may not pass. I think that we should keep it like we have it or even lower. So make sure it passes. And, this, like, I don't know what the other dispensaries do, but the Sesame Creek Collective gives discounts to people that have medical need, low income. They just gave me an article. They saved their compassionate care members nearly $15,000. They're really trying to be of service. It's not just recreational, it's medicinal. And I think we need to remember that.
Okay, so the motion is to get this on the ballot, and there won't be any debate over it if we don't get it passed. So we won't know that till November. So is there anybody who objects to putting this on the ballot? If not, why don't we go ahead and approve this and be sure that we meet the deadline? Okay, I'm not, okay.
You need a roll call vote?
Yes.
As a tax, yes.
Matt?
We do need a roll call because it's a tax.
So please call the roll then.
Mayor
Yeah,
Johnson.
is that James?
Oh, it's me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Gail.
Mayor Johnston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Blatz?
Yes.
Councilmember Francina?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Councilmember Wyrick?
Yes.
Okay, James, you and Gail can get this down to the county and we're moving.
Thank you, everyone. Susan, thank
Congratulations
you.
to the.
It may have been a quick night tonight, but there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that went into that.
And we're not done.
Yeah, we are not done. Okay, we now have a Casitas Water District proposed rate increase. Randy, you asked to have it on the agenda.
Well,
I agreed with you.
Don't we need to adopt resolution?
Mayor, item 6.
Okay.
Item 6, the other elections resolutions.
Yeah, we have 2 more.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, what do we need? Another motion for each of those, or can we combine?
One motion is sufficient for all 3 of the resolutions
Move
and the direction
approval.
of staff.
Move approval.
Okay, we got a
Second.
motion. Second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Yes.
Do we need a roll call on that too?
Yeah.
Yes, because it's
Yeah, you do.
elections.
Yeah, you would.
Okay. You ready for the roll call?
Okay. Councilmember Wyrick,
Yes.
Councilmember Haney,
Yes.
Councilmember Francina,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Blatz,
Yes.
Mayor Johnston.
Yes. Okay, those are all
There
passed.
you go.
So now we're on item number 7. This is there's going to be a hearing, on the 29th or something at Lake Casitas to,
June 24th.
what? Oh,
June 24th at 3 p.m.
oh, June 24th. Okay.
Yeah. So if you want, I could just briefly say, yeah. So there's a hearing on June 24th at 3 p.m. Casitas sent notices out to the public hearing to consider adoption of a new rate charge, which they are saying is for the proposed Ventura adjudication impact charge. They have stated in their materials that it's going to be to defend the rights in the Channel Keeper case. They're estimating $600,000 in legal costs per year, and so this will be going towards that. They laid out how the fees would be added, which is in the staff report, and noted that if the lawsuit is less expensive, the board may elect to reduce the charge in the future. So I think
Mayor,
Yes, Bill?
is there a sunset clause? I mean, if the case is settled,
Yeah.
what is there a specific sunset clause to this?
there did not appear to
So
be.
you know the answer to that.
I wanted to get on the record, Ryan.
No.
That's why we need to oppose it.
Well, the problem is I've never had anything this awkward. First of all, I'd do it for 580, but that's not the point. Literally, how do we not support this? Because I support nothing more than Casitas rallying to get the biggest war chest and rattling its saber after it decided to voluntarily leave the mediation. That is a clear indication that litigation is on the foot. And what better way to make it clear to the city of Ventura that they're raising money through a rate adjustment? That being said,
Why not just have a clause that says it'll go away when if the litigation's resolved and after the legal costs have been paid?
I know that's crazy, right? I mean, shouldn't it be based on an actual amount of costs? We for what it's worth, Measure V with the city, right? Hypothetically, if Casitas didn't spend all of the bond money, it would get returned through your property taxes. We made sure of that. Now, it doesn't mean they'll never not spend it on enough capital improvement to the system that they won't figure it out. But that is very frustrating. But I don't really know if there's another way to do it. But if Casitas had a way to say, hey, we will, put off those. Of course, remember too, if they get this money this way, hypothetically, it means a later increase, even if they use that money. But I read the proposal. It sure seemed like that money went to the general fund and not to a litigation fund that was earmarked. So,
Yeah.
But I'd be hard pressed to want to cut a leg out from under them because, frankly, I would have supported if it said 1.2 million.
Well, Mayor,
Which you'll never hear me say ever. I mean, honestly,
so I'm the one who brought this up. And like I said, it's not that I don't support the fact that Casitas needs additional funding to fight this. What I'm concerned with is the fact when the fight's over, they don't want to end the fee increase. So I'm just saying that we can write it. We can draft a support letter of what they're doing, but state that we cannot support the fact that there's not a sunset clause. That's all we're saying. And at the same time, we should probably be writing a letter to the city of Ventura stating that they have dropped their water to the number 2 level, which means they're not even conserving at the level that we are. And they're doing the same thing. They're assessing their community additional monies to fight this. So this adjudication fight, first of all, is a waste of time, money, and energy. There's a lot of better ways to solve this issue. But if we're going to throw money at it, we need to know when the money ends, not just let it be in perpetuity.
So are you wanting us to take a position as a council, or are we just discussing the shortfall? Because the first thing that hit my mind, hit me was why is the benefits assessment, other than it for administrative convenience, based on the size of the meter? Shouldn't it be based on the size of the usage, the amount of water?
That's another idea too.
Tony, I mean, yes, you know, there you go with that logical understanding of things. If you understand how water is built out, you can never base anything on a variable amount of water usage because you never know what's going to happen. So they always affix it to what they know they'll get it on, which is a small increase on what will not change, which is your meter size.
I mean, you guys, the reality of $1.51 a month is not significant. It's not, it's chump change. It's less than a cup of coffee. But it's the fact that they're going to do it in perpetuity. That's what just bugs me. And that's no different than what Golden State used to do. You know that? You just can't line your pockets with our money without proper justification. So we've got to figure out how to fight this.
How about a letter saying we support the effort, we support the funding, but it should go into a separate litigation fund that sunsets upon the conclusion of the legal process?
I mean, look, I don't know if I'm recused from this portion of this argument or not, but as far as casitas rates, I think I'm still allowed to say it. And as far as casitas rates, it sure makes sense that whatever we're paying should be an appropriate amount to do its job, which is one, pay for it, and two, scare Ventura into realizing that it's real, that them leaving the mediation means they're done talking and they're ready to litigate. And that amount should be built into this, whatever it costs, enough to make sure it will always be right. But I agree. I mean, if we get this done earlier, we shouldn't have to pay for the whole thing. If it's $5 million, I don't care. But if we pay $50,000, you'd sure think we'd get the rest of it back or not increased.
What do you think of Bill's motion?
We're putting enough of a bill out here extra for them, by the way.
I would, Mayor, I would second Bill's when Bill makes that motion on what he just said. And then I just wanted to briefly just comment to Ryan. Ryan, that train of fear left the track a long time ago when Ventura invested $4 or $5 million into this war. So they're not afraid of anybody fighting back.
Randy, I'm the first one who's going to say I am concerned that may be a pipe dream, but I'll tell you, COVID and a lot of money and a lot of different things have changed since the last time anybody I know asked Ventura, so we'll see if their answer changes. I'm hopeful it will. I'm not expecting it will, but I would sure like to see Casitas raise enough money to make it real clear to Ventura that when they decide to move forward, that Casitas is ready with a bigger stick. Walk softly.
My motion is a support letter in support of the adequate funding for the litigation into a separate litigation fund that sunsets upon the conclusion of paying for those litigation expenses.
Reimbursable to the taxpayers if it's not paid out.
Right. Matt, can we do what would be what are the teeth in this? If we just say we think we're in favor of it, but you do this, how can they amend it during the public hearing, or do they have to start over?
They could amend the rate increase to add the condition, either a sunset limit or the condition about separate fund. That they could do at the hearing. The key question before the council is whether you want to protest or not protest, and that's an on-off switch.
Well, we can't protest
on conditions.
My motion is not to protest. My motion is just to provide an opinion.
And Matt,
that would be fine.
Right? They haven't technically. We can't protest that. This isn't 218 protest yet because it hasn't gone.
I don't want to do that.
It is a 218 protest hearing. That's what they're holding.
Yeah,
already.
Tonight's hearing, of course, is not because we're not the rate proposer.
But the 24th already is that. I wasn't sure if that had to happen at the next hearing.
No, the 24th is their proposed 218 protest hearing, and as a property owner of several properties in the area, the city has the right to protest. I'm hearing a motion not to protest, but to provide additional commentary that the proposed rate increase needs to be adjusted to have a sunset clause and
I thought when we did this before, I thought it was the second reading.
That's my motion. I don't want to do a protest.
Okay. Well, I don't think I agree at this moment, but I don't think we should take the ability to protest off the table. So I think at this point in time, sending this shot over the bow and letting them know how we feel should not prevent us from having on the June 24th the ability to protest this.
Hey, Randy, I'll tell you this. I would amend the motion to say this, and Bill, if you'll accept this, I want to say we are supportive of the raising of the funds for the purpose of the litigation. We are not supportive of those funds being used if the litigation stops and those funds are not used. And we will, if that is not modified in their decision, then we are going to ongoingly consider protesting it.
We reserve the right to protest.
Yeah, we reserve. We give them notice that we might protest it, but we say these are the things we'd like to see. And then Matt, what with the June 20? We have up until the meeting to protest, right?
Right.
Yeah.
There's two opportunities for council: June 9th and June 23rd, when you could consider this further.
I accept your amendment, spoken like a true lawyer.
Thank you. And the 23rd lands the day before, Bill. It's perfect.
I didn't know I became a lawyer. Oh,
Okay,
Okay,
guys. Okay.
You
So
can
are
see
we
this is
saying
growing
that-
pretty well behind me. I feel like a little
Ryan, are we saying then that the hammer is if you don't amend this thing, we're going to
We might.
If you don't, yes. If you don't amend this, we're okay with 600,000. We're okay with the principle. If it doesn't have a term that says any money not spent goes back, so you don't get to keep it all in the rate increase, then we're not supportive of it. And we reserve the right that we may end up protesting it if it doesn't have that modification between now and when they pass it on.
I think that's a great.
but our protest is only what the value of the real estate that we have, the meters that we have, right?
Well, I have a lot of friends, Johnny. Who knows?
Oh, now wait, come on, Ryan.
Well,
Yeah,
I don't know.
meters.
I mean, the reality is,
No,
as a
have a
council, we
principle.
feel this. Individually, we can all feel however we want.
But we
I
have
am all for a saber-rattling war
Okay,
chest.
let's-
But I want Casitas to back me up that it's a
Okay,
saber-rattling war chest.
So that's what we're doing.
We understand that part. I'm trying to figure out what position the city council thinks we're getting ourselves into. We're only going to be, how many meters do we have? I don't know.
Well, that's true. But we won't have to decide, Johnny, hypothetically until what? June 23rd is the second meeting. We have 2 meetings in June. We
It worked
can
out.
systematically
Okay, so what we're doing is
review
we
this
pass a
and
motion, James puts it in a letter, we take it over and talk to Mike Flood and the board and Angelo, our representative.
yeah.
Okay.
We see what happens. I mean,
Okay.
look, I think we all agree. We're all supportive of what Casitas is doing. We just would like it tailored a little bit more to the benefit of our local community because we've all spent so much money on water in Ojai that we're kind of done
Got it.
leading out any action.
Okay, are we ready for a vote?
Yes.
Do we need to roll call, Matt?
Nope, not on this one.
Okay. Is there any objection to the letter? No. Okay. So ordered. James, you'll get that out post haste, and Bill, you and I've got a lot of negotiating to do.
Yeah, I know.
We're supposed to go with our masks.
Supposed to go to
on.
Ventura City. When are we going to go to Ventura City, Mayor?
Right. That's that. Yeah, and to some other nonprofit in town. Yeah. Okay.
There's lots of
All right,
negotiating.
that gets
There's
us
lots
to
of
the council reports. Now let's start with Randy.
I'm good.
Okay. Ryan.
James and I had a meeting last week with Lockie, along with Steve Colome and the member of the county.
Phil White.
Phil White. Thank you. And it was very solid. Of course, APCD said, yeah, you want an inventory of greenhouse gases. Great. We're busy. We got a lot of stuff to do. Then it was, I think, Ali, who's the second in charge there, suddenly he remembered I was vice chair, and suddenly it was, okay, we can get it done. It was interesting. We're 4.3 square miles and 1 square mile is golf courses. We can probably figure this out fairly easily. So I think we got to a point where we all agreed that it could be done without a lot of expenditure, and we could be a model that could help. So we got some good traction on that. We're going to be working on that. What ends up with that data, we don't know exactly, but it's essentially, just as quick as I could say it, the idea of what stationary sources exist in our geographical city, and then modeling what greenhouse gases come out of those. We probably aren't going to be able to do a lot with mobile sources. It's much more difficult, but it's a great starting point, and it's clear that other cities in the county will probably follow along once we get there. So that's it.
Souza, do you have anything?
Yeah, tomorrow is the third Community Advisory Committee for the Highway Demonstration Project. The third meeting. It's at 11 o'clock, a Zoom meeting, and all the information is on the city website on the Go Ojai page. And excuse me, this morning I walked the 6 blocks that we're working on, which is from the Y to Church. They're having people in the community do an analysis. And while I was walking, I met a man who was in one of those mobility scooters and his wife. They were walking the area too. So it'll be an interesting meeting tomorrow. Interesting to me, at least. I would say more, but I'm losing my voice.
Okay, great. Not that you're losing your voice. Bill. Bill?
Oh, 2 things really quick. I want to point out that one of the order of magnitude phenomenons of this COVID thing worldwide as well as the United States is there is now a massive back order for bicycles globally of people that want to get out of buses and subways and in many places cars, but not just for recreation, but also for commuting. And we may be seeing a structural shift in the industrialized countries globally towards wanting to use bicycle more as primary transportation and commuting transportation.
Bill, a paradigm shift.
Paradigm shift.
Paradigm shift.
A paradigm shift is happening, and it's fascinating. And the other thing is that I am getting finally some traction trying to get the Ventura Regional Sanitation District to think about, you know what, after $10 to $20 million of losses from closed and active landfills being burned over, maybe we ought to get some systematic fire hardening going. So we're getting some traction on that finally, and I'm hoping we're all going to learn something.
Okay, very good. Okay, city manager's report. Anything?
I was going to mention the meeting with Lockie, which Councilmember Blatz covered, and then the only thing I have to add is the Community Advisory Committee that Councilmember Francina just mentioned. That is open to anybody in the public who wants to attend, so they can get information by going to goojai.com. So, but nothing else.
This for that meeting tomorrow that Susie was talking about?
Yeah. The committee's now open to the public.
The people at home that are listening know that tomorrow they're welcome to participate and give us the feedback. Okay, future agenda items.
Oh, well, do we need I guess we're looking at maybe the next meeting possibly being in person?
Well, I wouldn't think so as a whole group. I mean, if you'd want to come down, or 3 of us, but I'm still under the stay put order of the post 75 crowd. So I'd be happy to talk to you through the computer.
Okay.
And I think the other cities are saying, let's watch this. James, didn't you get a little feedback from them?
Yeah, so we brought it up today because everything is changing very quickly. So all the cities were in a meeting with the county today, and we brought it up, and the county said that they are looking at potentially opening it up sometime in June, but they weren't ready or comfortable putting a date on it yet. So we actually pushed the boundaries a little bit today by allowing a couple people to come speak.
Okay, so we're probably in Zoom meeting next meeting then.
Yeah, and we'll keep everybody updated if an announcement comes out, but I got the sense it was late June, if anything.
I want to do it on Ojai Avenue, but I got a feeling I'm the only one.
Well, how about the plaza?
There you go.
Hey, I'm all for we're Ojai. Let's be flexible, not rigid.
Arcade Plaza.
Let's be open-minded. Let's do some experimentation. I know not everybody feels the same way, but I feel like we're small enough and nimble enough. I'd rather be flexible than rigid, but I do want to be safe more than anything else.
Okay, is that it? If it is, Everybody sleep tight.
Any other? I don't have anything. Johnny, you're good.
Yeah, okay, guys.
Thank you.
See you later.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Yeah.
Thank you.